Yo, what's going on, everybody? We are back, and it is the first look. Today, we're talking, of course, about the UFC Vegas 93 main event that's going down at the Apex Center, and it's my boy. If you guys have been watching this show for a long time, you know we're big fans on this show of Tatsuro Taira, and he's back, and he's in a main event setting for the very first time, taking on Perez, a guy who had been off the radar. He hadn't been able to make that walk for some time, had some injuries, had some cancellations, but now he's being very active, fighting the toughest guys in the division, time in and time out, coming off of a knockout win in his own right. His was in a main event over Mateus Nicolau in the top ranks of the division. So we've got a great main event on our hands. We got two guys that are worthy of this opportunity, in my humble opinion. Tatsuro Taira, 5-fight win streak in the organization. He's finished 4 of those fights. He's done it in impressive fashion last time out, using that ability on the feet, knockout of Carlos Fernandes, the only person to knock him out in 28 professional and amateur competition. So I think that we've got a great, card on our hands, but we can't break it down alone. Today on the show, we got a special first look guest, and you guys know him, you love him, the Jewish bettor, the MMA line mover. He's back in the building. My brother from another. How are you?
Hey, what's up, my man? I'm excited to break this one down. The Taira Whisperer. There you go, dude. That's why I showed up here today. We already know Taira, that's Liam's boy. There's no other way to get around it. You know, the facts are the facts. So I'm ready to break this one down. Hey, appreciate you guys. Got the haircut. I had to chop the lettuce, but I got a little mullet going, so I wanted to wait. You know, I had to grow it out. Had to style it up, so we got it done. Appreciate you, Dix Insider. Appreciate the chat. Let's get this money this week. Get an early look at the fights.
Hell yeah. My guy JB is here with the new microphone, sounding fresh, looking fresh. We love to have him on the show, so it's a pleasure to have you back, my brother. And without further ado, we'll start like we always do, guys. We want to just say this is our first look at the card, right? You guys know us. We're psychotic about our level of research that goes into this. We're going to keep pushing throughout the week, do more tape, do more analysis, but we have some resources under our belt. We've done some work, so we want to come to you guys early in the week, get the conversation started, and we got the sharpest chat in the game as well. So hopefully you guys will be contributing what you guys have to say as well as we're rocking. But without further ado, guys, we'll start with this main event. And my brother, I've been looking into this main event. I have no bets yet on this main event, but you know, it's as simple as I can only have one side of this main event, right? I'm biased as fuck. I like my guy Tatsuro Taira. I'm happy that he's getting this main event opportunity. I'm happy that he's getting 5 rounds to work. And I think that this is important for his development. Listen, if he wins this fight, loses this fight, I think it's important for him to take these fights, these opportunities. Perez, I think it's a winnable fight. Do I think it's an easy fight? I think it's far from it, right? I think it's one of his hardest fights so far in the UFC. However, we got to look back at how he was lined previously, right? In most of these fights, he ends up closing as a massive favorite. And in hindsight, he looked like a massive favorite in most of these fights. I would say, ironically, when it was the biggest line, I think, against Chirez is the one where he had the most adversity. But even then, and you can tell me if you disagree with this, because I'm curious what your thoughts are. But I looked at this fight, I rewatched it because that's the one on paper that's like, man, he went to a decision with this guy. He didn't finish him. So is there some cause for concern? I think that he clearly won the fight. When I rewatched the fight, I think Taira clearly won the fight. I think that him getting dropped, honestly, was a little bit more of him being a little bit low and off balance because I personally don't believe he was hurt there, right? Based on the reactions I saw when he hit the ground, he's instantly like taking the guy, putting him in horrible positions, and then he sweeps on top very quickly, starts beats him up from on top. So I wasn't sure that he actually got, hurt in that situation, right? There's times you see somebody get clipped and they start wobbling on the feet. That's like a clear example. You're like, oh, look at that. I can see it. It's plain as day. But when somebody gets dropped, sometimes they get hurt and sometimes they get off balance. And it looked to me like he got off balance there, not hurt personally. Now, when you look, there's been times he's been touched on the feet, right? People have landed shots on him. Even in those instances, I don't think he's getting hurt, but I just think that he's a little bit young, green, still figuring out his defense. And he's had so much success when you look at his run on the regional scene offensively that getting those 15-minute fights, I think, was important for him. When you look at how he ends out a lot of these fights, he's in the top position. He's looking for big ground and pound shots. The one thing I wanted to credit Chirez with is that he actually threatened with that guillotine late. I think that Taira has great fundamental guillotine defense. And he tries to bait people a lot of the time to go for the guillotine, because we've actually seen him defended in like 3 or 4 fights, right? Where guys go to lock up that guillotine. I think Candelario went for one, if my memory serves. I know that other guys along the way have gone for the guillotine. And then as they pull, he passes the guard or he deals with the guillotine, gets his head out, and then the guy's underneath, right? So he basically like tempts people. Come on, here's my neck. Go ahead. But I thought Chairez just put the best attempt forward, and it was late in a fight. He was a little bit more tired. So I always talk about, what do you do if you're in a compromised guillotine? Flat back yourself. He just showed that presence of mind, like, hey, I don't want to lose right now. I'm not going to give this up. So if I have to take this worst position, I'll do it. But I thought he had scored more effectively throughout the round. So when you look at what he does, the reason I like Tatsuro Taira is I always talk about, I'm a wrestler. But if you go out there to wrestle for 15 minutes, I'm not going to support your style. It's not what I like to watch. I'm a fan first, right? I like fighting, and I like to see people go out there and fight. And when you watch Tatsuro Taira, I think he's a brilliant fighter. He tries to damage people when he has the opportunity to damage people. He tries to finish people when he has the opportunity to finish people. And he tries to control people when he needs to control people. That's the essence of fighting. He has just shown a very well-versed set of skills. When he drops people, he would hit that rear naked choke switch up. No hooks, rear naked choke before the guy even knew what was happening. That's finishing instincts. That's not letting anybody off the hook. You could have a very tough guy out there, but if you put them in a choke, they go to sleep like anybody else, right? So when I think about how you beat a guy like Alex Perez, he's a very talented fighter. He's a very sound fighter. You look at Muhammad Mokaev, I would argue his biggest mistake there, the reason that fight was so close, he didn't try to damage Alex Perez almost at all, right? For the vast majority of that fight, he tried to wrestle for dominant control positions. That's hard to do, right? And especially when you're going against a wrestler, he knows all you want to do is wrestle me. We'll wrestle then. We'll wrestle all day. And he's not going to get tired from doing that. Alex Perez is training with the Gold Rush guys. He's training with good wrestlers and grapplers. So is he going to just get fatigued from, a little bit of wrestling and grappling? I don't think so. But is he going to make every right decision in the wrestling and grappling? No. I think that we've seen that throughout his career, right? The way that you get to the guys, you make him make a mistake in the wrestling and grappling phase of the fight. That's the most high percentage way to defeat him. The best fighters, that's how they've gone out there and approached it. Don't give him a chance. Get on him make a mistake. And if I can get to grappling situations and positions early, when we're dry, when we're fresh, I can beat this guy. I can finish him. I can put him away. And I think that Tatsuro Taira is a student of the sport. I think that he goes out there and he shows new layers of his game each and every time out. When he's out there gift wrapping people, using the elbows, using his ability to drop hammer fists, using his ability to, as people start reaching up to block or cover, switch to the triangle choke. I would argue he's got one of the best triangle armbar series I've seen put to work in the UFC, where if you start to defend one, he's switching to the other, he's going belly down with it. That's just going to snap your arm in half. Like that. It's like you get to make the choice. Do I want to be in this uncomfortable position with a broken arm and he's still trying to choke me, or do I want to tap and get out of here? Most people are going to make the rational human choice to live another day, tap and get out of there. So I think that this kid is extremely dangerous. He's extremely flexible. We've seen times where he's in the bottom guard and he just grabs a hold of the guy, pulls himself to the back, right? It's like he's in the bottom guard and then he's just on your back. It's an incredible degree of flexibility, athleticism, and creativity. So I love his grappling. I think it's sensational. I do think it's better than Alex Perez, though I think Alex Perez has looked fantastic in his recent fights. I thought the Mokaev fight was extremely impressive. I expected Mokaev to not only win that fight, but to finish it. He was sick, right? He was posting his, toilet contents on the internet for everybody to gaze at after that one. Disgusting. But in any case, right? You got a little bit of a lesser version of Mokaev, and he went out there very conservative, I would argue, trying to wrestle, trying to grapple. And I thought Perez was the more aggressive fighter, but he just got put in too many control positions. He ends up losing the close decision there, right? Then you look at, the fight against Matheus Nicolau. People will disagree with me. Your mileage may vary, but if you put Tatsuro Taira in there against Matheus Nicolau, you made him a plus 150 underdog. You gave me the same KO lines. I'd have bet every one of them, and I think it'd cash too. So when you look, I think that he could have done the exact same thing that Alex Perez just did, personally. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I had said, however many months ago on Twitter, there's guys in the top 5 right now that could not last 15 minutes with Tatsuro Taira. I wasn't trying to subtweet Matheus Nicolau, but I was subtweeting Matheus Nicolau and these other guys that are good, but I think Tatsuro Taira, one position, he can make him pay on the ground. On top of that, we just saw what he could do on the feet, right? He was landing heavy calf kicks. He was landing impactful strikes Also on the ground, he was beating the shit out of Fernandes, right? That I think is why it only took one huge strike in the second round to close the show. But also, it's not just like Fernandes quit or he got tired or something like that. Look at his eye; it was like half caved in. Tatsuro Taira has massive hands for the flyweight division. That sounds silly. Just go look at it. It's true. He has very large hands. He throws them with a lot of impact, and he hurts people very badly. He's doing it throughout his career. So I think that Tatsuro Taira has power. I don't think people respect that. I think they will soon. He did his camp, my brother, in elevation, right? So he went to Colorado. He's been training at Team Elevation. I forget the name of the Muay Thai gym. I don't want to speak out of turn. Maybe it's like 10-ounce Muay Thai or some shit like this. He goes there and he works on his striking in particular. He's doing it at elevation. He's working with Chepe Mariscal and UFC level fighters. And for me, that's what we wanted to see from this guy. He's already got the skills and the abilities. We see that from him working at the Paestra, I believe it's called. I might be butchering that pronunciation, but in Japan, right? He got a great foundation. But what you want to see is somebody honing their craft against UFC level fighters. That's what he's doing. Took a whole camp out here, right? Moved his life out here for this opportunity. So it's not going to be jet lag. He's not flying in from Japan. He's been living in the US. He's been working with training partners that really care about him. And a lot of people from the gym have nothing but positive things to say about his work ethic and about his ability. I believe in it too. So give me Tatsuro Taira. I think he's going to win this fight. I do think he's going to finish this fight, but if it goes 5 rounds, I think it's going to be competitive. I think the distinguishing factor for me was that when I went back to look at this, I saw that Tatsuro Taira does compete at leg kick range. Alex Perez has some of the only leg kick knockouts in the UFC, right? He's done a great job utilizing the calf kick, especially at a time when other guys weren't as consistent, persistent, aggressive, offensive with that maneuver. But now I think that Tatsuro Taira can answer those positions. I saw him checking low kicks in the footage as well. I believe that if you can check the low kicks, not get clipped on the chin, I think that Tatsuro Taira has more skills and more positions. I think he'll win the fight. But it's a hell of a matchup. My brother, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think this is a good one, bro. I think this is a banger flyweight fight because we got Tatsuro Taira, who hasn't lost the fight yet. He's literally the cream of the crop right now at flyweight when we talk about fighters. And he's going up against a vet, probably definitely his toughest test yet, and Alex Perez, who has looked better as of late. He went up against Makayev. I believe Makayev, regardless or not, had a staph infection in that fight. But it was a big step up for Makayev as well. So we've seen it be close with Perez with these prospects coming up. I think Tatsuro Taira presents a different style of wrestling, though, that Perez is used to. I think some of his, I guess you would say, anthropomorphic advantages could present him some opportunities in this fight. He's very long, he's very lanky, and he hangs on people, man. He's going to not just shoot for the legs. He's going to clinch up. He's going to look to get to the back. He's going to look to get you down whatever way he can, engage in the grappling. And once this guy's on you, I think he's probably one of the best fighters that he's fought besides, I guess, Pantoja at the submission ability. Obviously, we got Figueiredo as well, who also submitted him, but he even lost via ground and pound before. So on the mat, I don't count this guy to lose any.
That Benavidez stoppage, though, I will say, is one of the weirdest stoppages in UFC history because Joe Benavidez runs into him head first. He falls over, reaches out for a single leg, and then he punches him in the brainstem about 12 in a row, and they stopped it. But it was concerning that he's getting hurt that early. Please continue, my brother.
Yeah, man, and I just think Taira, what I was going to get to say is he has some nasty ground and pound. That's one of the things that's my favorite thing about him is he will mix the ground and pound with the submissions just so effortlessly. It's actually really beautiful to watch, and that's one thing I don't see in MMA. Either guys are grappling or they're just punching and then they're letting their opponents up. He does a great job of keeping his opponents controlled and punching at the same time, and he's landing damage. And in the new era of MMA where they're scoring the damage, that's huge. And he could take a whole round out of Perez easily just by backpacking him. I don't see how Perez gets out once Taira gets to his back. That's going to be a game over right there. So that's another opportunity. Then in the striking, I think Perez is legit. I think he has the leg kicks, but we just saw in his last fight as well, Taira is underrated. His striking, he's educated with his feints. He knows when to go, and you have to be worried about the takedowns as well. He can engage in the tie clinch with the knees, and it's just hard for me to make a case for Perez here. I know he's a good fighter, but I think the Nicolau fight showed that he could knock you out. But Nicolau, man, he has a bad chin in my opinion, and I don't know how much I want to rate that. So basically what I'm saying is give me the up-and-coming fighter. I think I'm going to go with Taira here. I think he's going to use his grappling or his striking to win this fight. I think he's better in either spot. So give me the younger guy who I think is better at striking, has good cardio, and I think he's going to out-grapple him as well. So that's my take. Maybe call it bullish, but I'm right here with you on this one. I think this kid's special.
Yeah, man. Well, then we tend to agree. My guy Dixon is saying that his questions got lost in the chat.
Let's go
so
for it.
I'm trying to look for it. He said Perez training with high school wrestlers, so his anti-wrestling is sharp and quick. Listen, I don't know that Taira is going to surprise him with speed in the wrestling, right? I think that what Taira does that's excellent typically is his ability to latch on to grips around the body. He's got very long reach. So once he wraps around the body, he's going for trips, he's going for pulls, and he's not afraid to end up on the bottom position because he's excellent at creating scrambles. And like, he's just not an easy guy to be on top of. Most of the time, guys have gotten on top of him in the UFC. They end up getting reverse swept, their back taken, and it's normally very quickly as well. So I think that that's kind of the danger for Alex Perez is like getting into ground exchanges, because the other thing is, guys, you remember Davison Figueiredo didn't get on top of Alex Perez, right? When did he do that? He went for like a scissor sweep, and then he went for a leg lock exchange, and then he rolled into like a reverse switch attempt. And then as he was doing all this, he flowed into the guillotine. Unfortunately, the copyright got pulled on the video from a tweet that I gave about this, but the flow from Figueiredo there was pretty insane. But also Alex Perez was like just one step behind him every time. It was like beat, 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 and he was just one half beat behind him. Muhammad Mokaev, for as good as he is with his wrestling, there's been a lot of fights where he just controls people with the wrestling, right? Like, he's not looking to finish fights at as an aggressive of a clip. And when he does, it's more so fatigue based, or it's more so, I hurt you. Cody Durden, he hit him with a knee and then guillotined him. Okay, like, very good. It was a nice shot. But then you look at the other fight, it was like Jafel Filo literally spends all the energy in his body trying to rip this guy's knee in half, which he basically did. And then he didn't tap. So then he gets out and like drags himself onto him with one leg and gets a rear naked choke. That was super impressive. But again, it was like Jafel Filo just had nothing left to give. He gave everything, thought he had it, didn't have it. Okay, I lost. Like, you got me. Like, it was one of those situations. So, man, I think that both these guys have shown a lot of great things throughout their career. But the one thing is, if you look, it's not just the more recent fights against the top guys. There's been other fights throughout his career where Alex Perez has suffered these same fates, right? He's been submitted a number of times. The guillotine has been a consistent problem. And normally, I say this, losses are pathological in MMA. It's very hard to correct certain habits that you've had for 30 professional fights, right? And so even a guy that's as talented as Perez, he's very good at stopping wrestling exchanges, but grappling exchanges are where things start to get dicey for him. So I do think against a wrestler like Mokaev, a guy who's going to push that wrestling pace, he's going to make you work the whole time. He's going to make it an honest wrestling exchange. But once it gets to the grappling phase, I think that's where the tide could turn. I think that's where you could see the creativity and the sophistication of a guy like Taira maybe show itself throughout the fight. And then additionally, right, I think my difference between how I see this and how a lot of people see this, I think of Tatsuro Taira as extremely dangerous on the feet, right? And I do think that the thing that he needs in order to be more dangerous on the feet is just confidence and comfortability, right? It's hard to go out there and strike with guys because it is a risk. It is a little bit of a hesitation. Like, man, if I can take you down, why wouldn't I? But when you start to get to the higher levels, you need to have the comfort on your feet. I think we saw that in his last fight where he showed, hey, if I take it to the ground, I'll do a lot of damage there. But when I'm on the feet, I'm looking to land big shots and hurt people, clip people. I think he dropped Carlos Candelario, if my memory serves as well. He's hurt a couple guys in the UFC with the hands. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Also, he throws high kicks. He throws body kicks. He's not afraid to, mix in different levels of strikes. And so if they're competing low kick for low kick, don't be surprised if there's a head kick that comes up. Don't be surprised if there's a couple strikes that people aren't expecting, because he's continuing to work on those aspects of his game, and he's extremely flexible, right? So I think his ability to get up on these strikes, especially with a huge size advantage, he's going to have about a 5-inch reach advantage. I think that that's something that we could see come into play here. Now, who is the recency bias on here? Perez for the Nicolau KO or Tatsuro because of the hype? Listen, it's all about perspective, right? I do think there's some recency bias on the Perez side because he just won a main event by knockout in the exact same price range, right? It's like, how could you ignore that data set? It's like, wow, that's pretty impressive. Then you look at the other side, it's like, wow, Taira hasn't fought these guys. you can make a very colorable case for Alex Perez. And I know sharp guys that are going to be on that side. But part of fighting is trying to determine like whether somebody's coming or going, whether somebody's the goods or not, right? It's about talent evaluation. And when Taira got to the UFC, he was minus 200 against a couple guys that I thought he was going to clean up. I thought he was going to dominate. I thought he was going to embarrass him. And so I bet 10 units at a pop at minus 225. And people were like, bro, that's a lot of confidence for a debutante. That's a lot of, and I'm like, yeah, but these opportunities won't be around. Then the next time out, he's minus 600, he's minus 550. And I'm just trying to show people the way that betting works, right? It's like there's a time and a place for everything. So is this the time to fade Taira? Geez, I don't know. But I'm not going to go lay my money to find out, because I'll just tell you guys the truth about my betting results. When I bet on Alex Perez, things haven't gone good for me. I thought he was going to give Pantoja an honest run. Instead, he got cleaned up instantly, right? At a very similar price range, right? He's like plus 170 or so. Then you look at some of these other fights that he's had. Davison Figueiredo. I actually bet Davison Figueiredo like minus 255 in that spot. People called it foolish beforehand. Looked all right after. It's like he went out there and just here, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step gone. That's it. You know, it's like he just was way better at jiu-jitsu and he cleaned him up. Now, I think Perez has gotten way better since then, but he's also still had these problems throughout his career. He's also still made these mistakes throughout his career, especially when the moments are the brightest. I honestly thought Matheus Nicolau was kind of a tailor-made matchup for him. I believe I picked him via KO or decision in that fight. You know, and I like Matheus Nicolau. I think he's a nice guy. I bet on him against Manel Cap, but I almost had a heart attack watching that fight. Right. And when it was rebooked, I was ready to bet Manel Cap by knockout because I kind of seen what time it was with Matheus Nicolau. He's just not able to take the shots at this level against the best guys. You put him in the lower parts of the division, he's doing great. You put him against Brandon Royval, it's one knee to the face in the first round and the fight's over. You know, you put him against these top guys, just hasn't worked out. And Alex Perez has always been able to pressure, come in with the boxing, throw a lot of shots. It's like that's not going to work well for Matheus Nicolau. I think Tatsuro Taira, on the other hand, if you want to pressure forward, he's going to try and reactively take you down, and he's huge and he's strong. So I think he's going to have some success if he does that, body locking, getting a hold of him, getting the back, creating a ground exchange. And if not, if Perez is not putting on pressure, then I think Taira is going to be landing clean, long shots with more power. So that's the way I see it. But I do think it's a great fight, and I can see it going either way. I'm not saying like, go bet the house on Tatsuro Taira, but I do think if the line continues to creep down a little bit, maybe I would be intrigued to get on the Taira side, because now we're back into a playable range. Whereas when it's up at minus 400, minus 550, it really doesn't matter who you are. It's going to be very hard for me to get behind those prices. But in any case, great fight, great main event. And
Can I
looking
add?
forward to it. Yeah, please. I would love if you do.
Yeah, some things you said, the creativity, man, that's the thing with the wrestling. It's a different style. And what I saw in his last fight, man, this guy's the goods. I wouldn't even be shocked if he runs into a counter from Taira as well, because I think a lot of people are going to be taking the sub, because Alex Perez, man, he's been subbed every which way possible. But I wouldn't sleep on the power, man. And that's something that you called early on, right? That's something that you had in the last fight. I don't think a lot of people were taking it. Everyone's going to take the sub because that's the clear path. This guy's got vicious ground and pound and clean counters. He absolutely butchered that last guy, Fernandes. Man, he did whatever he wanted to him. And say what you want about Fernandes, but any flyweight that level in the UFC, and you're just cooking him out like that, I got to give the guy his flowers. So no way I'm going on the other side here. I'm with you, my boy. Let's get this money.
And the other thing is, I think that if he had a little bit more time in round 2 against Edgar Chairez, he could have finished him there. Like, he's been in very dominant positions against almost every opponent. CJ Vergara, he got in dominant positions. I will say CJ Vergara threatened him with a head and arm choke, right? There's been these moments of adversity, but he's always responded well.
I like
and
to
normally
see that, though,
he
right?
gets out and then gets on top and beats the shit out of you. It's almost like the Volkanovski effect, right? It's like you piss him off and then he starts beating you up worse. That's kind of what I like to see from Taira as well, because he's a young man. You have to expect that some people are going to offer resistance. I think Alex Perez is going to offer resistance. I just think that eventually the guy who's going to be able to deal more damage, have more finishing opportunities, and potentially, like you said, bank rounds with body triangles and control positions, I think that it's Tatsuro Taira. So yeah, that's the way it goes.
Yep.
And we can move to the next fight, my brother. And this one, I'm not going to have as much to say on, frankly. If you want, you could lead this one off. I don't think you have a tremendous amount on this one either. Listen, Antonio Trocoli, for me, I'm just going to just disclose right off the front, he's a complete unknown to me, right? When you haven't fought in MMA since 2019, I mean, what do I really make of that, right? I think he was on the Contender Series. He got the win. He was an underdog there. He's an underdog here. So actually, no, he fought more recently than the Contender Series fight. That's interesting. Interesting. And the bout was overturned to a no contest. Yeah, this guy seems like a real prospect in the division, right? On the other side, I will say I know Ikram Aliskerov, and I do think he's a very quality fighter. We still have a lot to learn about him. The Warley Alves win, kind of a given in that stage. Phil Hawes going out there, getting the win in the fashion that he did. I mean, it was absolutely brutal, guys. He put Phil Hawes in the box. One of the worst knockouts you'll ever see. He did it in New Jersey to a New Jersey guy. Did not love that. Mario Souza, that guy's just no good, in my humble opinion, for the UFC level, right? Obviously, he kicked my ass, right? But when you're talking about at the UFC level, Mario Souza got destroyed on the ground by Chidi Njokuani, if I'm thinking of the right guy, and just like obliterated on the mat. And he's supposed to be a jiu-jitsu guy, so that's just a tough look. I think that when you're looking at Ikram, the one loss on his record being to Khamzat Chimaev, it was a knockout, right? It was a fantastic knockout. He was D'ing up some takedowns and looking very good in that fight. And it just shows you that's the way fighting can go sometimes. But I don't think there's too much going on here. I think Ikram's probably going to smash this guy. I wouldn't lay the minus 900 or whatever it is. But it just feels to me like a fight that probably should not have been sanctioned. How about you, brother?
I mean, what are we doing here? This guy hasn't fought in forever, bro. This is straight up a joke at this point. They're giving Ikram an easy layup win. I don't care what anybody said. It's just mine. I can't do anything with this one, Liam. I got Ikram. I think he could out-grapple him on the ground. I think he takes him down, gets to the wrist ride, flattens him out, even maybe gets a TKO on the ground. I think this guy's going to immediately, as soon as Ikram starts to grapple, I think he's going to go to his back. I think he's going to capitulate. He's probably going to turn up.
Man, I got to say this. My only gut instinct is to bet the sub, and you know exactly why. Just because everybody's going to think it's going to be a knockout. So my gut instinct is to fade the public perception, and then he's going to knock him out in 10 seconds.
Yeah, short notice debut guy. Usually like to bet the sub against him. It's an easy way out for Trocoli. Like, what is he fighting for, right? He knows he's probably going to lose. He's probably going to go out, try to like knock him out early, try to latch on to some crazy sub. It's not going to work, and then Ikram's just going to be the better fighter. You could finish him either way he wants it, honestly. So I'll have to look into it, but I think he passes his guard easy, gets on top, maybe finishes him with an arm triangle in round 1. I think that's it, bro.
I think he had stopped fighting to play poker. Looks like.
Yeah, I saw that. And it's World Series of Poker right now.
Yeah, exactly. My man, I don't know, bro. Maybe my man's distracted, right? He's out there getting hands in. He's got action on everybody in the WSOP, bro. He's got solvers on every table. I'm playing. I'm not a poker guy. I'm just fucking around. But in any case, there you have it, man. It's not a fight that I feel super strongly about, but what I will do, like I always do, is my due diligence. I will go watch this guy's fights. I will go, get a better understanding of him. But for first look, guys, I'm giving you my first look, which is I don't know who the hell Antonio Trocoli is, and I watch this sport every week. So
I'd rather spend another hour and a half glazing Taira than doing that.
Exactly. Next one up, my brother. We've got Lucas Almeida probably fighting for his UFC job and career, I would have to assume at this point, taking on Timothy Twilight Cuamba. This is a fun one, man, because I think a lot of us felt that Timmy Cuamba probably deserved that win against Balaji Oki. It was certainly a close fight, but it was a split decision. And, it was a fight where both guys landed a lot of good shots. Both guys looked like they really wanted to win. So I thought that it was a good showing for Cuamba, 25 years of age, still a young man in the game. And I have not been thrilled by what I've seen from Lucas Almeida. He looks like he's stiff in his striking. He's very upright. He gets clipped on the chin. Andre Fili can be a powerful guy, but he put him down bad. Pat Sabatini just absolutely routed him from pillar to post. And Pat is a guy that, he can be touched on the chin. You can see that his win-loss record hasn't been great lately. And Lucas Almeida, one of those few victims along the way. I really respect Pat Sabatini's game. I think as a grappler, he's absolutely sensational. But in the damage taking and giving business, it's just hard to not be able to take much damage from these guys that are big hitters. And Lucas Almeida, that's like his calling card, right? And he just was not able to land much. He was getting taken down very frequently. And I don't know that his takedown defense is very sound. The Mike Trezano fight, he almost got knocked out in the first round. And, he got hurt badly in that fight. He was able to rally. He's a tough guy. He wants to win. You can see that. He goes out there and swangs and bangs. And I think I bet him against Trezano. So it was like, was that a good bet or just won the cash, right? It was like one of those bets because he did almost get put down in the first round. But when you get a big underdog and he comes through, I think it's like plus 170, you take it by any means necessary. And, he did land a good shot to end that fight. Losing to Zellhuber, no skin off your nose, but obviously Zellhuber was a little bit green at the time and they went strike for strike. You saw Almeida can go out there and throw, but he gets tired, man. He just was exhausted the whole fight, basically. And Zellhuber's just like teeing off on him and he's throwing back, but he's just throwing everything underwater. He's throwing everything, half committed, and he landed some good shots, but I just don't know where he's at right now. 33 years of age, 1-2 in the UFC. And I don't think Cuamba is like a super proven guy. He is coming off of a loss in his debut. You never want to overvalue somebody coming off a loss, but he looks to be, the fresher guy, the guy who could take a better shot, the guy who could throw more volume potentially over the course of this fight. So it just seems to me like Cuamba is probably going to win this one, but I don't know if there's a tremendous amount of value here. And the fact that he's been submitted in the first round before, he's been clipped with strikes before, it is a little bit worrisome for me as a chalked out favorite with no proven UFC wins. The win over Trezano is probably a better win than any win on his resume. In fairness, I think Mateo Vogel's a solid win, but that's just the way I see it. Cuamba has more upside. Long-term, he's probably going to have a better UFC career, but Almeida, you're going to get a hungry dog in there. He's fighting for his life and his career. So that's my only narrative take coming into this one. How about you, brother?
Yeah, I think Almeida would have trouble getting Cuamba down. He has a good wrestling base, good defensive wrestling, working with Dewey Cooper. And actually, you just mentioned something. He fought Daniel Zellhuber, actually Cuamba's main training partner. These guys are it's very focused training as well with Dewey Cooper. They're working almost solely together. So that's good. He has him in the corner. We'll have some of that extra knowledge coming into this fight. I think he's got the better boxing than Almeida, and I think he's going to be able to defend the wrestling. So there's really not much I got to say about this fight. I think, people give a lot of crap to Dewey Cooper, right? It's like a lot of people say it's like glorified mitt holders. That's kind of the sentiment you get out there. But I think he has, care for his students, his focus being put in there. Last time he wasn't there in Timmy's corner. He was in Abu Dhabi, I believe, or wherever it was.
With Francis Ngannou. Great point,
right.
Dude. You told me that. You're a smart man.
And I thought, that could actually play a difference because I actually asked him after the fight, what do you think about it? And he was like, if I was there, I would have told him to do this, that, and the third. And it's quite interesting, actually some of the things he had to say. I think he wanted to get this guy on the feet, pressure forward, not play any grappling games, and, stick with the hands. But remember, I also believe it was a short notice fight for Timmy Cuamba as well, if I'm not mistaken. So who really knows where his cardio is at here? I think he's going to be able to push.
I think he was unsigned from the UFC, and they brought him in as a replacement for Balagiocchi's opponent. I think you're right about that because he went contender and then another fight on like the Vegas local scene, I believe. I don't think he got signed off that.
It was recent too. It was like right before that on Tough Enough, I think it is, right?
And then I think he fought on his birthday. He had a lot going on, man.
Right, dude, that was a hectic one, bro. And he actually showed up. It was a really close fight. I think some people even may have thought he won. So I like Cuamba here. I think they're not going to want him to lose 2 times in a row. Almeida, I think he's when we're talking about the future product for the UFC.
He is not a part of it.
I don't think Almeida is a part of it. And I think Cuamba, contender series guy, could be. And we'll see maybe some more of those on the card later. But I like Cuamba here, man. I'm going to go with my guy Dewey.
Fair play, brother. I tend to see it the same way. Next up, we've got a 135-pound fight. This is going down in the men's bantamweight division. And we've got Chapo Miles Johns taking on Douglas Da Silva de Andrade. Love this guy. Fun fighter. Gone out there, got a lot of crazy wins. I've never been too fond of Miles Johns. I think he he's just done a couple of things that rub me the wrong way, right? If you look back at his record, he kind of held the glove of Kevin Natividad and knocked him out so bad, could have changed his career. So it just always left a sour taste in my mouth. But you also got to give credit where it's due. I do think he's shown a better product in his more recent fights. The Dan Argueta fight, the Cody Gibson fight, the Vince Morales fight, pretty decent 3-fight win streak. Obviously, none of those names blow your hair back. But when you look at how he was able to handle the fights, he just looked more composed over 15 minutes than he has in the past. When he got finished by John Castaneda, when he got finished by Mario Bautista, there's a lot of panic. There's a lot of jittery, movements. And I do think we saw a little bit of the kind of panic in the Cody Gibson fight, but the takedowns were just so free that, I think he was always able to relieve himself there. And Cody Gibson, honestly, just looked like he wasn't able to hurt him with anything. So he didn't have to respect his power. And I do think that in this fight, early on especially, he's going to have to respect the power of Douglas Silva de Andrade. He is a heavy-handed guy. He also is a pretty violent dude. He busted up Sergey Morozov and then choked him silly in a very violent back-and-forth fight. So I think that he's a guy that, people sometimes forget exactly what, cloth he's cut from. But I also just think at 39 years of age in this bantamweight division, it's a tough sled. He's 38 and 11 months, right? Essentially 39. And when you look at the book Fightnomics, it's a book I talk about a lot on this show, but it's a book I believe in the numbers, right? And if they could point to one trend that was just so significant, it was fighters over the age of 38, their likelihood of getting knocked out relative to other fighters that are below that age threshold, it's just massive. Right. And I think that Miles Johns is going to throw the same committed offense that he always does, ducking his head, overhands, both directions, throwing hooks, keeping everything short. He does poke out the jab a lot as well. And if Douglas starts to get tired here, he could just get clipped. He's getting up there in age. And I do think that he's starting to wear a little bit of damage in these fights. The last time out, Cody Stamann, Cody Stamann's a guy with pretty short reach who's not able to do very much damage. Some people would categorize Miles Johns the same way. But, he was able to get the win over him, right? So I feel like Miles can probably get the win here via knockout or decision. I think he's got to be careful in the early going. But it's a weird fight for me, man. And I think that, if we were getting a younger Douglas, I'd definitely feel better about it. But I just think that now he's more likely to get knocked out, whereas a younger version of him probably wasn't. If we see him rock up on the scales looking like he's 25 years of age, then maybe I'll change my mind, right? And I do think post-USADA, we've seen these guys over the age threshold just look like otherworldly versions of themselves. But I almost need to believe it when I see it with this guy because 39, it's up there, especially at bantamweight, man. There's other weight classes, heavyweight, where you can make it work for a lot longer, and it's just hard to keep up with these guys when you get up there at bantamweight. How about you, my man?
Yeah, man, I feel like a few fights ago, I would have said this is an easy Douglas D. Silva de Andrade fight, but he has improved working with Trey Ogden. I will say that. And I actually bet this guy his last couple of fights. I think Miles Johns, made those improvements. Another one later on this card, Garrett Armfield, the guy he's been working with as well, I think has made improvements. And that's something I've been saying, and I think will continue here. And the cardio as well, man. He used to gas a lot harder, I feel like. Maybe it's because of the pace of the fight and the pressure. I still think he gets a little bit tired. The volume does wane a little bit, but it's not as bad. And he honestly looks a lot better in that aspect. And I think when you give Miles Johns that dangerous cardio, he becomes a different fighter because he's always been good in round one. He has solid wrestling, semi-reliable chin. He's been hurt before, and powerful boxing. But I think with Trey Ogden, he's pushing it all together. I'm going to have to take a back step on this fight because I am a Douglas D. Silva de Andrade fan as well. I think he presents some problems as well in the striking, but I think mixing it up over 3 rounds, I'm going to go with Miles John. I think he's going to have the better game plan, but I could see it going all 3 rounds as well, and I don't trust the judges as of lately, so it's going to be a tough one. I'm going to have to keep looking into it, but I will say I think Miles Johns from 2 fights ago compared to now is a different fighter.
I don't know what the price would look like here, but what I would look into is the decision-only market on Miles Johns. If you look at his losses in the UFC, they're both, inside the distance, right? And I think for Douglas, he's a very dangerous guy, right? You make one mistake against this guy, he can hurt you. He throws to the body hard. He throws to the head hard. And he's also looking to submit you if he gets into the ground. Sergey Morozov, right? he was being gangster about that, man. He did not want to tap at all. So what did he do? He just put him to sleep, right? Sergey Morozov was literally bleeding out of his face and put to sleep, with a choke. So this guy is extremely dangerous. You don't
I
want to
was
play
there,
any
bro. That fight was so crazy, bro. So crazy. He was an underdog there too.
Unbelievable fight. And when you look at his record, one thing I put together every week is a previous performance in odds range document. I try and get a picture for how these fighters perform over time. I send it out on Patreon, and I did just do that for this week. He's 4-5 as a UFC underdog. Several times he's come through at big plus money. So he's turned you a profit, if a small one, as a dog. But it also is a question of, am I getting in too late, right? Am I buying into the trend when it's going to start regressing towards the mean as he gets a little bit older? But I just don't want to count him out yet. I'm not going to get all invested on the Miles Johns train at the chalk price. But again, in the decision only market, that's a way I'd look to target it because when he goes to decisions, he's got pretty good optics for it. That assumes that he hasn't gotten clipped badly on the chin. He hasn't been submitted. So it's like, that I think is the kind of fight that Miles Johns wins here. It's like outpointing him, landing the better shots, using his footwork, being a little bit evasive, but it's also in a small apex octagon. So it's going to encourage some exchanges here. And that's why somebody could get clipped. But I think that Miles Johns, he's starting to get a little bit more sound with his offense. Shout out to my guy, Marcus. Says small donation from the Nubian bookstore from Atlanta. Shout out to Jew with the fresh haircut. I got to say, shout out to our guy, Marcus. A long-term friend of the show. We always appreciate his opinions on these fights. Great work on Twitter. And also, guys, check out the Nubian bookstore. I have not yet been to Atlanta. I love to be there one day. And when I go to any new city, I check out a bookstore. So, my man, I'll be there as soon as I get to the ATL. Appreciate you, Marcus, very much. Thank you for the dono, brother. And without further ado, Marcus, guys. Huge shout out to Marcus. You know that. Without further ado, we got Asu Almabaev taking on Jose Johnson. And this is a crazy one, man, because you got Jose Johnson. He's a massive underdog in this spot. He's actually the younger fighter here. He's a big guy. I'm surprised to see him taking a fight in this division, my man. I don't know if you feel the same, but I think that this is a really interesting fight. I'll kick it over to you first, brother. How do you feel about this matchup where we've got the very talented Kazakhstan fighter, Asu Almabaev, looking to take on Jose Johnson here, a battle-tested veteran. What do you think?
I think Jose Johnson, depending on the weight, it could either be a good play or it could be like get washed immediately, bro. Like if he comes in looking dead on the scales, I might look into some round one Almabaev stuff or some wacky, crazy props on this one because he's a huge favorite. There's no way I'm going to bet at money line. But I'm almost positive he's going to get takedowns. This guy's gangly. He can scramble, and you definitely have to worry about the submissions. He'll attack submissions from the most random angles because he's got the most ridiculously long limbs, even at 35. He's fighting Chad Hellinger, and he just latched onto that rear naked choke in round 3. He's hit triangles. I think he got the triangle against Mo Miller. Take it for what it's worth, but he can wrap it up at any time. I think Almabaev is just too good. I think he's going to avoid all those submission attempts. I think he's going to pass his guard. I think he's going to be patient in certain positions, just like Taira. He's not going to immediately rush. It's a little bit different style, but he holds. He knows when to go. Right? It's very calculated. I like his wrestling as well. I think he's going to be able to put Johnson down at ease. I think Johnson at 25 might just tip over because this guy's short, stocky, good wrestling. Pre-UFC, I didn't really like him. I actually tried to fade him a couple times because I saw the Zach Makovsky fight. Zach Makovsky, a guy that didn't really make it at the UFC level. But when we talk about stylistic matchups, Makovsky is a better wrestler than any of the guys that this guy had fought, previously. So it could have been a nice step up for him. Tough matchup. He had faced some adversity in that fight, but he had got through it, and he has looked way better in the UFC as of recently, going up against guys like Vergara, taking him all the way, domination, in my opinion. He never was really in any trouble there. I think Jose Johnson could present some danger, knees up the middle or something. Almabaev's going to have to worry about a lot of the things, if I was Johnson's coach, I'm telling him knees up the middle, uppercuts, straight up the middle, try and knock this guy out. And I think that's his chance to win this fight. So I'll be betting Almabaev at a minus 600. No, but I'm going to definitely be watching weigh-ins because I know he's going to get him down. And this guy super gassed. He's super dehydrated. His brain's not all there. anything can happen. And I think it could just be pure domination from the Almabaev side. So I'm going to be looking out for it. I think this fight could even go to decision, just depending on how good Johnson is at not getting finished. He did take Vergara to decision. Vergara is pretty good, but we'll have to see. I don't count it out because, like I said, he's very patient. He's not going to rush the position. He's going to hold you. He's going to get off shots, and he's going to make sure he just does enough to not let the ref stand it up. Advanced position, eventually get to your back. And his back control and his finishing ability from the back is good as well. So I could go on and on, but I like Almabaev in the spot, and I think it's a pretty clear favorite. But at the same time, if I watch weigh-ins and Johnson comes in good, these odds are super wide at a money line standpoint. Johnson presents, striking danger and submission danger. So anything could happen in the octagon. We've seen it time and time, Liam. These guys parlay up these huge favorites, right? And then it's a Cody Brundage DQ versus Jacob Malkoun, or it's a Jeka Saragih knockout in round 1 versus Lucas Almeida. So you have to be really careful when you parlay these big favorites, especially in MMA. It's the craziest sport. They're throwing fists. Shit happens. So please keep that in mind, people.
Yeah, I'm going to largely agree with you, brother. Listen, I think Tatsuro Taira is a good fighter. I got to first address the chat because my guy Bo says Butler looked like a corpse last week. Can't believe Liam bet on that dude. Listen, brother, if you're having a guy go to what was a pretty routed decision, right? I'll admit that. I would put that fight if I had to reline it about a plus 300, plus 400. I don't think I got great value on it, right? I would definitely size down the bet if I had it to do over. But let's go back and revisit last week's event, right? Completed events here on Tapology. Let's go see the round-by-round results of this fight. Just for a brief moment, right? Because the theory of my bet was you have a guy in Brad Katona who went out there in round 1. He landed 8 significant strikes to Jesse Butler's 7, okay? Then in round 2, he landed 15-2. So no doubt about it, he whooped his ass in round 2. He got on top of him. If you guys remember, that's when he opened up the cuts. He got some elbows off. He passed the guard a little bit. That was the best Brad Katona's ever looked in the UFC. Then round 3, you get back to Brad Katona being Brad Katona, stands on the feet with him, trades some shots. Later on in the round, he took him down and upped the strike total, but it was 21-45. So the most significant strikes I think you ever got from Brad Katona in a round. Salute to you guys. Y'all knew it was coming. But it's like when you just look at the fight on paper, you have a much bigger fighter, and he's taking on a guy who's not going to throw a lot of significant strikes. I'm going to take plus 500 on those iterations every time with the hopes that when you guys zig, it zags, right? It's like when everybody continues to think it's a guarantee, but it's guys that are not putting themselves in great advantage, right? Even Brad Katona in round 3 electing to stand on the feet and trade some shots. That's negative EV when you're laying minus 700 favorites. It just is. So I think that Jesse Butler stinks, right? And I can laugh at myself. I put out a couple of tweets like, I put real money on this guy in between round 2. He's adjusting the handlebars on his mustache, right? Maybe not the smartest guy in the world, but he landed a lot of big right hands in the 3rd round. And it was a competitive enough fight that, unfortunately, guys, if I had the same information, I'd have to do it all again at plus 500. I would just size it down a little bit, and I'd hope that he fought a better game plan because I don't think Brad Katona covers minus 700 against almost anybody at this division in the UFC. So that's how I feel about it. But in any case, when we look at a fight like this, again, I'm going to have to say, I think Tatsuro Taira is a talented guy, but Ode Osborne is one of the most exploitable grapplers in the flyweight division in the UFC. And I don't mean that to disparage him at all. I just mean we've seen it on a number of occasions, right? Guys were able to go out there, put him in the same position and get the same result, right? Jafel Filo, I said Jafel Filo is going to beat Ode Osborne. He's going to submit him from the back. Why did I say it? It's because it was on tape. It was very visible, right? Then you look at CJ Vergara, my man, he has the exact same footage out there. Right? If you go look for it, CJ Vergara had some moments against Taira where he was able to rally, right? I talked about that in the Taira breakdown, but then you also saw that when he got put in these other positions, he didn't really have many answers. I think it was at 135 on the regional scene. He got taken down and submitted in like 16 seconds or something. I could be misremembering. Maybe it's a minute. The guy literally sprints at him, grabs a hold of him, takes him to the ground, puts a rear naked choke in, and the fight is over. So when you just look at CJ Vergara, there has been some really concerning tape in the past. And Asu did fine, right? He did a great job, but he was out there for the whole 15 minutes, right? He's giving the guy a chance. And that is a guy that is on the lower end of the division that guys are looking to go out there and finish, make a statement on. And obviously some guys have been turned back by him, but then you look at the record of Vergara and it's like, man, these other wins and things haven't aged that great either. It's like, okay, maybe he just got a little fortunate with his run in the UFC. And then I look at Asu Almabaev. You talked about it, right? It's 4 fights ago. He fought Zach Makovsky, very competitive fight. Then you look at the Kenneth fight. I don't really know what to make of that one. Ode Osborne, I think, is an exploitable grappler. And then you look at CJ Vergara. Again, it's a guy that I thought he should have finished, right? So that just made me temper my enthusiasm a slight bit on Asu Almabaev. I still think he's very good. I still think he's got talent. I think he can go out there and wrestle. I talk about my guys, right? I have these list of guys that I think are underappreciated in the MMA space. And they're, an eclectic list of names, right? If you don't watch MMA every week, maybe some of these guys are foreign to you, but Ayman Zahabi, Chad and Hellinger, these guys that are just underdogs that people don't really know of. They don't believe in them, whatever it is. Victor Hugo, my guy from Contender Series, that goes out there and gets these crazy rolling knee bar finishes and always looking to do something crazy, yell something crazy. I love to see these kind of fun fighters that just have a uniqueness about them. And I'll tell you what, guys, Chad and Hellinger was prepared for that Jose Johnson fight. He was in great shape for that Jose Johnson fight. He showed up. Jose Johnson looked sensational, I thought, in that fight where he was out there, landed good shots. He was competing in every grappling position. Chad and Hellinger can grapple, guys. He's gone out there and given guys tough situations. Brady Heistand, a guy we'll talk about later, known for his grappling, known for going out there and pushing that. He was able to use his guillotine, get back up, create some opportunities. Like, you just see that this guy is a scrapper. And I was impressed to see him finish a guy like Chad and Hellinger, who had a broken nose, keeps fighting, keeps at his distance, loses a tough decision. He's a guy that's very tough, and he's hard to put away. It was impressive to me to go out there and put a guy like that away. So I don't think of Jose Johnson as a punk. I don't think of him as a guy that's easy to get one over on. And frankly, he's got a weird, awkward body style. Damon Blackshear is a good grappler. He was fighting him on his birthday. He was up a weight class. Right now, if you can make 125 and you're fighting a guy like Damon Blackshear, who's very strong, can fight 135, 145, doing fine, I think that that's the kind of guy you have to say, man, that was a tough matchup. The guy just put him in horrible positions early. And frankly, if there's a huge grappling disparity, it doesn't matter if, it's a silly move or not. It's like, the twister really hurts, right? Korean Zombie had a move he was very good at, sophisticated with. It didn't matter that it's kind of a gimmicky move. He's going to break your neck. He's going to rip your head off. Like, you're going to have to tap to this. So I just think that Jose Johnson, embarrassed that night, lived to fight another day, got his get back. I feel like at 125, if he can make the weight and be effective, he'd be an insane, guy to fight, right? He's doing damage off his back with elbows and craziness. I do think he can get taken down, but I think one of the harder things to do is control these guys with super long legs and elbows and when it's a fight, right? If it's a jiu-jitsu match, it's a little bit different. They can't kick you in the face. They can't elbow you from the bottom. But when they can use every weapon, man, it gets very hard to control guys like that. You have to be very careful or you can get hit with something that you don't see coming. Those are the shots that hurt you. And Asu Almabaev, it's not like he's not worn blood before. It's not like he's not been clipped before with a decent shot. So it's just like, this kid is very good. He's very talented. But if you're out there trying to wrestle and grapple a guy who's going to be like, bang, bang, elbows from the back all night and just make it an awkward, greasy affair, it's a tough guy to look good against and to cover huge prices against, I feel. So maybe he goes out there and justifies it. I do think he's talented, but I don't think I could get behind these kind of prices. And I'm curious to see what this peaks at, brother. If it's plus 500, I might be there again looking like an asshole posting, how did I go on this guy? But fuck it. That's me, bro. I'll do it again. I'll do it again.
His submission threat's so dangerous here, too, I think, just due to the length. And I think this is by far it when he makes the weight, if he does, is going to be the longest guy that this guy's fought. Even if he comes in like 2 pounds over, doesn't sweat it. Like, dude, he could definitely give Almabaev some problems if he makes this into a dogfight, just like you said. So I'm not going to be laying the Almabaev, but I need to see the weigh-ins here. That's the number one thing for me. I'm not going to make any final decisions till I see both these guys come in on the scale.
Yep, indeed, my brother. I feel the same way. Next up, we've got Adam Fugitt taking on Josh Quinlan. I believe this will round out our main card, brother. And Josh Quinlan seems to be a popular pick both in the market and on Tapology. When you're just looking at this matchup, it seems like a lot of people like that side. He's an athletic guy. I believe he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got some power on the feet. He's got some impressive knockouts. But my man, I got to just level with you. that knockout he took 3 months and 3 weeks ago against Danny Barlow was horrific. Because it was an accumulation of insane damage. I thought he got his ass whooped. And I don't mean that in a, light or dismissive way. I just mean like it was a really brutal fight. Danny Barlow hits like a truck. And he just was hitting him all over the place, battering him all night. Now you look at the Adam Fugitt side. It's not to say that he didn't get, hit cleanly in his losses, right? He's been busted up a little bit. He can definitely get hurt, get clipped. But you look at Mike Malott, what's the story of his career? He either finishes you early or it starts to get really dicey. But when he finishes people early, it normally looks pretty brutal, right? So I'm not going to write that off as this guy sucks. Everybody tried to say Basel Hafez is going to easily knock out Mickey Gall in the first round because of what, this guy, Mike Malott, was able to do to him. And then what did we see there? That didn't happen, right? They fought a brutal 15 minutes and both guys hurt each other over the course of that. So I think that when you look at Adam Fugitt, he's not a guy that I want to dismiss out of hand because you look at Michael Morales, that's just a really brutal fight, right? It's a tough guy to beat right now. Mike Malott, again, you could say fraud, exposed, fugazi, whatever you want to. He was one fight away from being in the top 15 in this division, right? He was widely considered like a guy who deserved that step up in competition. So I think revisionist history is common in MMA, right? On the other side of things, Danny Barlow, very talented guy. You don't want to take too much away from that. Trey Waters, long guy, awkward guy, hard to get a beat on. But Jason Witt via knockout, I mean, what do you even do with that? Like, okay, great, nicely done. So did Phil Rowe. He didn't look so good last week, and obviously you don't want to just read too much into it. Logan Urban, where's he at? Is he a UFC level guy? We still have no evidence to indicate that. So I think that Adam Fugitt has had the tougher road to hoe. He's proven he can go out there as an underdog, get the win. I don't think he's been favored to win a fight yet in the UFC. So, posting up the record he has, that's impressive enough in its own right. And I just think that Quinlan, he's coming back too soon. I think this is an ego play. And I'll listen to his interviews. I'll try and make sure I have all the information here. But gut feeling, man, this is a dogger pass for me. I'm not seeing it. How about you, brother?
Yeah, my dude Adam Fugitt follows me. So, like, anytime a fighter follows me back or follows me at all, I got to just go with, nah, I'm joking. But, I got to look a little bit more into this one. But I like some of the things you said. I think also another interesting point is, maybe Quinlan can have some success in the grappling. But if Fugitt is able to hurt him, we've seen him be able to wrap up some submissions as well. He at least attempts it. So, Quinlan is a black belt, but you get hit, like you said, all the time, right? You get hit one time, you're a brown belt. You get hit a couple more times. Eventually, that goes out the window. So that's something interesting to look at. Fugitt making a big change here, moving to Arizona, heading to Fight Ready. I think that's an interesting storyline as well in this fight. He's going to be having some new coaches, some people, in his corner. New training partners, sparring with Kelvin Gastelum as well. That's something I like to see. You go out of your way to move, to another state, stay there. You obviously are caring about your career rather than a guy like Josh Quinlan. It's an ego play, bro. You said it beautifully, man. And I love the way you worded it. There's no other reason for it. He's coming off, 2 losses now in a row? And you're going to.
Indeed. 2 losses in a row. And then Fugitt has taken a year off. Yeah,
he's actually trying to make the effort to make the improvements. You just got knocked the fuck out in round. Nothing looked good about that. And then now you're going to come back 3 months later to take another fight. Like, no offense to the guy, but I think he should probably take some time off, work on some of the things and some of the mistakes that he made in that fight, and then come back versus a UFC opponent. Does that mean he's not going to win here? No, but just thinking about it logically, like, if you're in his shoes, would you be doing that? Nah, I mean, I don't think it's a smart play. So you worded it beautifully there, my man. I'm going to have to do more film on this fight for sure. When I look at it on paper, I think people are going to think, Adam Fugitt, who's that guy? Like, he's been a UFC underdog a couple times. He's cashed one time versus a guy, the Japanese Connor, right? He ruined that hype train.
Yep.
Right. So I can't count out Fugitt here.
The thing that I was thinking of was he had also fought Solomon Renfro, and he was an underdog in that fight. It was kind of a publicized fight. And Solomon's a good fighter, a local guy, so nothing but love and respect. But, that was a tough result for him there. Fugitt is just he's dangerous early, man. And I think Kinoshita was kind of underestimating him and just found that out the hard way, man. This guy comes out to crack, and he's a guy that brings a lot of intensity, which I like to see. It should be a good fight.
Yeah, Renfro was giving Mago a bunch of problems in his fight on short notice. So, he's a talented fighter in himself. Say what you want about the fight. If you're able to get the finish over him, I got to give you some respect, and he did it again versus Kinoshita. That's like, what's Quinlan's fan base? At least, Fugitt, the Japanese people saw him knock out their guy. They at least know who he is. They at least hate him. Like, Quinlan's just so unpromotable, in my opinion. I think this is third loss cut, and either guy's gonna get. I think is gonna be I think Quinlan in his interview said this is the last fight on his contract. So I think this might be it for him, bro. Could be a interesting fight to look into.
Yeah, definitely interesting. I mean, Fugitt's 35, right? So we got to be clear. He's not, a spring chicken, right? He's an older guy, but he's all in, right? I've listened to his media and like I did digest some of what he had to say about this fight, and he's like, as all in as you could be. That's what I am right now. He's like, I devoted my life. I moved everything. Like, this is it for me. Okay, I'd rather be on that guy than the other guy. Period. Point blank. Next up, we've got Tagir Ulanbekov taking on Joshua Van in what should be a sensational fight, my brother. Joshua Van, I think he's local to the Texas regional scene. So, maybe a guy you've gotten to see in person. I'm curious if you have. But, when you look at this guy coming out of 4-ounce Fight Club, what do we know about these guys typically? They come out to fight. They are not afraid to get in a scrap. They are dangerous. They got power. They're willing to go out there and bang it out on the feet and see which man falls over. And I think Josh Van in those kind of contests, super dangerous. But here against a guy like Tagir Ulanbekov, I think it's a really tough fight for him. I think that it was going to be a tough fight for him against Taira as well. Not because he's not extremely talented, but just because what he does very well is he creates, a hard fight to sustain for the other guy over the course of 15 minutes, right? If you go out there with Joshua Van and you want to just keep going 15-minute tit for tat, he's going to chip away at you. He's going to work your body. He's going to hit you upstairs. He's going to chip away. And eventually you're going to start to feel fatigued. You're going to be like, man, this guy's hurting me. I don't like these shots no more. You're going to start making worse decisions. He's a hard guy to be in there with for a long time, and he can clip you. He can hurt you. He's a powerful guy. He's got power in those hands. But when you look at Tagir, what I think that he does well is he's a guy that's fought high-level competition, and he's been surprising people with that ability to get the submission, right? We saw Umar Nurmagomedov all over Nate Maness, was not able to submit him there or did he submit him late in the fight? But either way, it was like a domination. I think it was a decision, but he basically took, an eternity to get a hold of this guy, over and over trying to ride him out. Tagir Ulanbekov can be very dangerous in these positions. Cody Durden, another guy, wants to go out there, wrestle, grapple. He's happy to do that. Alan Nascimento, very talented grappler, and he was able to get the split decision win over Nascimento. That's not an easy win to come by, So I feel like this is a spot where we've seen Tagir Ulanbekov tested against other really good grapplers, and he's typically found a way to get the win. The loss along the way, Tim Elliott cheated his ass off. I still don't know if he won that fight. So for me, man, it's a spot where you could definitely see a changing of the guard. I think Van is a fantastic fighter, right? It's not the kind of guy I want to lay minus 225 against. Let's be very frank about that. But he's also a guy who I think is just going to be a little bit outgunned positionally in the grappling in this one. And I think it's going to lead to a submission loss. How about you, brother?
I thought the same thing pre-tape. I know this is
I got to tape this one more, so I'm curious, right, man. Please go ahead.
Sure. I actually am impressed with Van, man. I think we're getting value on him here just because of the pre-UFC fights. The guy can't grapple. They say on the broadcast he's only been wrestling for 6 months. People said grappling, but it's wrestling. And I think they mean like pure wrestling in the gym. I don't know what they mean there. I know the guy's been training mixed martial arts. He's fighting in Fury FC. You telling me the guy's never wrestled before? So I think that was a misspeak on them.
Welcome to Texas.
Yeah, for real. Even then, bro, like this dude's pressure, his mixed martial arts style, his coaches, I think are very smart as well. He does remind me a lot of Pineda as well. I think he's got even a good jiu-jitsu game. This guy's hitting calf slicers, bro. He's hitting chokes. He's trying to submit Bunez at the end of the fight. His coaches are telling him not to go for it. So I think he's going to be dangerous in a lot of spots.
And I had Van sub. I'm like, guys, could you shut up for a second?
Right, dude. And he's confident, man, just to say he's going to go for the submission, right? He's got people really underestimate his grappling. I watched some of his interviews, and he sounds super confident in his grappling that this guy's going to try and test him. He's had a long camp. I think all of it's been defensive grappling based. So I sometimes I want to take the grappler, right? But this is mixed martial arts. He's going to have to mix it in. And I think Van is very modern in the way he gets back to his feet. He's going to use the cage to get back up. He's going to control the wrist. I think, yeah, Tagir might be a step ahead of him on certain positions, but I think the grit and the scrambles, the ability of Van, I think we're going to see some improvements here, and I think he's going to work him on the feet, hurt Tagir, force some bad shots at it Tagir. And once the shots become telegraphed, right, I think it's going to be a problem. Sure, he's been submitted before. That was years ago, taken down regionally. It's pre-UFC, guys. Everybody has to start somewhere. I think this guy's 22 years old, making rapid improvements at a great gym. And I think the body work could definitely hurt this guy. I think Van would be smart to mix in the body work, mix in the low kicks, because let's be honest, guys, Tagir's, he's a little frail. He's a little bit skinny. I think that could work. We've seen him hurt to the legs as well before. I think it was Tim Elliott possibly was kicking the low leg. I think a few guys have kicked the low leg on him and hurt him and made fights closer than they should have been. Yeah, Tim Elliott's a good grappler, but he's willing to scramble in certain positions where I think Van's sole focus won't be counter grappling. It will be trying to get away and get back to the feet, and I think that's going to be key here. I think his coaches are going to guide him in the right way, and I think he's going to box him up, come forward. And if we go back and watch the interview, bro, he said it again, bro. Go watch his interview. He said, I wouldn't be shocked if I get a submission this fight. Talk about confidence, bro. You're calling for a submission on Tagir Ulanbekov, whether it happens or not, man. The dude, like, he's like, just listen to the interview. He's like, he doesn't even know what's coming. Like, I got this. And I'm interested to see what's coming, but I think it's going to be smart defensive grappling, using the cage to get back to the feet, getting back to range, and then working the body.
It's funny, man, because when I look at the data, right, the data does tell an interesting story here, because Josh Van, he's been fighting a lower level guy in the division. You got to be fair about that. But he's outlanded all three of his UFC opponents, including Zhalgas Zhumagulov, who's a pretty talented guy. He fought him on short notice. I bet him there as a plus 175 underdog, and he got the win. And, but I didn't bet him for enough, right? So don't clap for me. I bet him for too small of an amount. But in any case, I appreciate it. The guy, Tagir Ulanbekov, he's won a lot of these fights, right? But he got outlanded by Alan Nascimento on significant strikes, 25-18. He got outlanded on significant strikes by Bruno Silva, 47-46. Those are both wins.
That was the fight with the low kicks, Bruno Silva. Thank you. That was an interesting fight too, because Bruno Silva had some positions as well.
Hell yeah. And then you look, and Tim Elliott is the one that he loses, right? He loses that fight, and he actually outlanded Tim Elliott. That's the only opponent he ever outlanded in the UFC. So he outlanded Tim Elliott, but he got taken down and he got knocked down in that fight. So he ends up losing the fight. Then you look at the Nate Maness fight, and he submits him very easily in the first round. So shout out to him for that. Then you look at the Cody Durden fight, right? And again, he gets outlanded by Cody Durden on significant strikes, but he got the knockdown and he got the win. So that's an impressive, way of dealing with the fact that you're getting outlanded every fight. You're still winning. You're getting takedowns. Like, you're being dominant enough that other people respect it and give you the win. But it also is just a sign of things like, man, that's something when you're paying big chalk, you want to make sure you're checking every box. I always talk about this. And if I'm not going to land more strikes than my opponent, it's going to be harder to win fights, right? Just like logically speaking. So when you're thinking about that, I think that's something to consider. Also, there's got to be nobody producing a higher strikes landed per minute, maybe in the UFC, right? 9.1 significant strikes landed per minute for Joshua Van so far in his UFC career. That's 120 against Zhalgas Zhumagulov, 156 against Kevin Borjas. And if you guys remember, I actually think Van got stung in the first round against Kevin Borjas, right? He kind of got hurt a little bit in that fight, and Borjas was landing some shots. By rounds 2 and 3, he beat the absolute shit out of Kevin Borjas and was just nonstop throwing shots there. I bet Kevin Borjas. I was like, man, I made a pretty sound wager. And then by the end of it, I was like, I wasted money. This was never going to come through for me, was it? Because I thought we saw the best of Borjas early, and he just had nothing to continue to offer Van down the stretch. And when I'm looking at this guy, man, he's getting better over time. The Felipe Bunez fight, I mean, I thought he could have submitted him as well, but these guys, they're just not as proven as Tagir Ulanbekov. Kevin Borjas, I think, would lose to Tagir. Felipe Bunez, I think, would lose to Tagir. Zhalgas Zhumagulov, didn't they fight on the regionals? Let me check that. Yeah, he lost the majority decision to Zhalgas Zhumagulov in one of the worst robberies you've ever seen. And that is the comeuppance that Zhalgas has gotten his whole career, right? It's like he got that one robbery over Tagir, and he never could win a decision again the rest of his life. Brutal stuff. We love Zhalgas on the show, ZZ Top, but I'm looking at a guy in Tagir who's very talented, but I would be playing Tagir by sub if I was taking anything on this fight. or Tagir, ITD trying to lean into the fact that Van got buzzed that one time, or maybe a positional TKO for Tagir. But I think the way he would win this fight is more often than not, with his submission. I think that if this fight goes the distance, that's where we're getting, a very interesting outcome. Just because, again, he's not outlanding many people on significant strikes, and Joshua Van is putting up significant strikes at an insane clip. So that's the way I feel. Great fight. And Joshua Van, he's going to have a future, right? It's just whether or not this is too much too soon. It's very possible that it is. But, if it's not, then these prices are going to be gone.
It's a good test, right? Yeah,
it is.
Will definitely be gone.
It is. It's a fascinating fight, man.
I love it, man. I love it. It's a great fight, dude. I love the comments as well. I bet Zach Reese apparently and then stole his haircut. That's a good one, man. Gotta give
stuff.
You that one.
Good stuff. Two winners there, right? Last week they were saying that I looked like Ludovic Klein and what's his name? Wiz looked like Dominic Reyes, and we had an undefeated showing.
Oh my gosh, bro, that's hilarious. That's a good one, bro. I can't even lie on that one. I had to shout that one out. But yeah, now Josh Van's the mush of the week, 100%. That's gonna be it, bro. No, I'm joking. But I think people are gonna assume he's gonna be a public underdog. I think there will be people on Tagir as well. Just because of the perceived grappling advantage. I actually think Van's going to anti-wrestle him here and be able to land the more damaging shots on the feet. So if he's just able to not get subbed, then I think we're in good money here with Van. So I like him. I think he's a talented kid. And like you said, if he does win this fight, does beat Tagir, those numbers will be gone.
There you have it. Great fight. Interesting stuff. Guys, we want to just do a quick pause for the cause and say, if you haven't already, get subscribed to the channel. We appreciate it. We're doing content each and every week on here talking about the UFC, going back and time stamping it, trying to make it a little bit more convenient for you guys. So if you don't mind, that's a little bit of an easy way to love and show support. Drop a like on the video if you have not already. And if you're watching along on Twitter, X, we love to have you, but make sure you get subscribed on YouTube as well, because it does a great number to help the show. So appreciate you guys. Thank you all so much for the support. And without further ado, it's right along to the next one, man. We got a flyweight contest. It's going down. One of the biggest favorites on the card, man. Nate Maness taking on Jimmy the Brick Flick. Let's talk about fundamentals, my man, because this is always, I think, every show has something different to offer in the space, right? And I respect everybody that puts out content. One of the things I try and talk about is long-term things, fundamentals, each and every week on the show. So that way people can learn, put together their own strategies. You never have to ride with me, right? Jesse Butler, bad play. Denise Gomes, good play. I'm not going to get them all right. I'm just going to try and put together the same logic, the same long-term angles over time, and use that to create profitable betting strategies. That's how I roll. And so I'm looking at this and I say to myself, fundamentally, I love Nate Maness, right? Like Nate Maness, Kentucky tough, sound, right? Great fighter, fun guy, awesome. Let's look at the fundamentals, brother. He's never been a favorite in the UFC since his first fight, okay? He came into the organization. He's 15-3 as a professional, all right? And he fought Johnny Munoz Jr., okay, who has not had a good career at all in the UFC. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody, but we go poke. He's 2-4 in the promotion. I'd be surprised if he hasn't been let go already. He's coming off of a few straight losses. So Nate Maness got the win there. Guys, it was a competitive, unanimous decision. A lot of people thought Johnny Munoz might have won that fight at the time. Then you look at the Luke Sanders fight, right? If you don't believe me, look at the market activity, because the market does not lie to you. Right? He opens up favored to beat Luke Sanders. Everybody comes in the other side. They said Luke Sanders will win the fight. Luke Sanders, who was like one of the bigger flakes in the UFC at the time. And Luke Sanders did what Luke Sanders does. And he flaked that fight. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful. Again, we're just trying to call it like we see it. Luke Sanders, his talent is way higher than his results, right? He should have been a better fighter. It doesn't always work out. You'd rather be lucky than good, because he was a good fighter. He wasn't a very lucky fighter. Things didn't work out for him, right? Then you look at a guy like Tony Gravely. Guys, Tony Gravely broke his jaw in the first round. Tony Gravely had him as good as finished, right? He walks back to his corner. He doesn't know where he is. They're sitting him down. Hey, Nate, you're in a cage fight. There's somebody trying to fight you over here. Okay, so you better put your hands up trying to hurt this guy. He's like, okay, coach, you got it. Gets back up, cashes my plus 160. He's a soldier forever for me. I love you, bro. Thank you. I appreciate what you do. But when you're getting your jaw broken as a plus 160 and coming back, that shows you should have probably been the underdog. But you did your job and you said, hey, I'm going to bite down on the mouthpiece. I'm going to find a way to win, right? Starts cutting more weight, goes down, 125, Umar Nurmagomedov. kind of let him know, hey, tour of the octagon. Oh, I'll go against Tagir. Cuts the weight, right? Looks good on the scale. Gets submitted in the first round. So now it's like, all right, I got dominated in the grappling by Umar, but I didn't get finished. Then I get submitted very easily by Tagir. Not a great look for me. Tough sledding. Then I beat Mateus Mendonça. And again, we always love and respect everybody that steps in the octagon. Mateus Mendonça has been exposed inside the octagon. He's 0-3 in the promotion. He lost to Jesus Aguilar, close split decision, but you're going to close split decisions with Jesus Aguilar. Nate Maness finished him easily in the first round after losing his debut in the first round easily. Then you look at Javid Basharat, easily dominated him for the duration of the fight, except for a couple leg lock exchanges early, and he gassed out in that fight. So there's just not been that much to love about Mendonça, unfortunately, throughout his 3-fight skid in the organization. Now, when I look at this fight, I say to myself, Nate Maness, I mean, like, yeah, you would figure he should win, right? He should win, but we're also talking about numbers and assigning percentages, right? Nate Maness hasn't been favored to win a fight yet, and now he's one of the biggest favorites on the card. Does that not strike anybody as a little bit odd? Like, I know that Jimmy Flick is a little bit limited in his, win condition, but he does have abilities to win fights, right? Let's go look at Jimmy Flick's record. 17-7, obviously some concerning losses along the way. Alessandro Costa, is that loss aging poorly, guys? Is Alessandro Costa looking like a bum, like a scrub, like a guy who doesn't know how to fight? I don't think so. He's 2-2 in the promotion with finish win over Kevin Borjas, finish win over Jimmy Flick, got finished by Amir Albazi, top 5 guy, and he lost to Steve Erceg, just fought for the championship. Does that guy suck? Is that guy a bum? He didn't know how to fight? Because Jimmy Flick lost to him and he didn't look good. I'll say that. He got finished by Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson's been on a great run lately. He keeps winning these fights as dogs. He keeps going out there and surprising people. So I will admit, Jimmy took a long time off. He's had a bunch of things where you don't know exactly where his head's at for all these fights. But Malcolm Gordon is a jiu-jitsu black belt. And it wasn't easy for Makayev to submit him. It wasn't easy for any of these guys to submit him. Jimmy Flick submits him. Is he a bum at grappling? Does he not know how to fight? Like, I just have to start asking these questions because I am a contrarian. I will be the first to admit to you, I don't want to be on the side that everybody's on. I don't want to be on the side that everybody thinks is free money and a lock. And that's not how I roll. I'm always looking to poke holes, right? I'm the guy with a freaking needle just trying to pop the balloon. And maybe it's not going to work every time, right? Brad Katona, his balloon floats on. He still hasn't finished a fight. Still hasn't landed more than 6 significant strikes in the first round or whatever the fuck it was. But hey, he went out there and got the win. Hats off to him, right? I'll be the first to give props when you win. But the other thing is, if you continue to lay these huge prices, you get it wrong one time, it takes you 6-7 times back at the window to get the money back. Whereas I'm just trying to get one of these right, pay for all the tickets, right? It's like that's the difference in these. And when you're looking at a guy like Jimmy Flick, I do agree he's probably going to need to win this fight by submission to win it, right? So he's got a limited win condition. But we just saw this guy get submitted in the first round 2 fights ago. So however good you think Tagir Ulanbekov is he like the second coming? Does he just know all these moves that Jimmy Flick doesn't know? He can try things Jimmy Flick doesn't. It's like, if you can get submitted in the first round, you can get submitted in the first round. That's it. And I just think that we've seen it. We have the proof of concept. You know he can get submitted in the first round. It's happened to him. It's happened to him in this weight class. Can it happen to him against Jimmy Flick? Fuck yeah. The guy who can submit basically anybody. He submitted Cody Durden with what, a flying triangle? It's not even supposed to be a real move. It just flies up in the air. That's what he can do. And if he doesn't get that, yeah, he's going to get finished in all likelihood, right? Nate Maness, a tougher guy, a more brutal guy, a guy who can fight in more places, right? He can fight on the feet better. He can knock this guy clean out. I like the unders. I like, playing the underdog here. And you're just rooting for the fact that this guy, Nate Maness, nobody ever thought he should have been this big a favorite before. Nobody's ever thought he should have been favored to win a UFC fight. And now they are certain that he should win this fight and win it so easily, and it should be dominant, and it should be no question. And I'm just like, let's find out. Right? Let's find out. Maybe he should, but let's find out. How about you, my man?
Yeah, I mean, I've cashed the big dog ticket with you before, man. It's a hobby, dude. Massive ticket. So if there's anybody I'm going to go ahead and listen to on a big underdog, it's Liam's going to be top 3, if not the number 1. He's definitely the number 1 for me. So I'm going to be listening. And we talked a little bit about this. I think laying minus 500 on Nate Maness is absolutely insane. And some of the reasons, actually, I'm going against Tagir Ulanbekov. Nate Maness, came down to 125. I think that was his first fight there. He absolutely got murdered. I don't like the way he looked on the scale in that first fight. Obviously, it's gotten down packed. We're going to have to watch him on weigh-ins no matter what. He is a big 25er. He does carry power. But I think Flick is dangerous in round one, just like you said. Everything you stated, it's a submission round one. I think there's some interesting ways you can get in on this fight, just talking about bet-wise. So I think this fight probably doesn't go the distance. I mean, minus 800 not to go the distance. So you're telling me it can't be the Flick side? I mean, Flick's not, he's losing to guys like Charles Johnson. I mean, that was a tough matchup coming back after a huge layoff. What is he fighting for?
Charles Johnson is like impossible to submit. Like, with all fairness, like, there's a difference between the proof of concept there and here. It's like,
right,
one guy's been submitted. Charles Johnson's not been submitted. He fought a lot of good grapplers, man.
Yeah, the problem with Flick is, after round one, he starts to wear down a little bit. He could become a little bit lethargic. He kind of quits a little bit, I want to say, as well. And I don't mean that in any disparaging way. I love the dude. He's another guy follows me and likes all my stuff. So I love Jimmy the Brick Flick. I bet him in his last fight. Took him against Malcolm Gordon. Well, a lot of people were doubting him there as an underdog. But like you said, versus Cody Durden, flying triangle, bro. This guy's tricky in his jiu-jitsu and what he does, especially dangerous in round one. Why do you think Charles Johnson, is trying to avoid, some of the submissions? Because they're dangerous. That's what they are. They're submissions. And I think he's a legitimate black belt. Is it a great style for MMA in total? No, not necessarily. Like, he's going out there, he's doing dumb stuff, pulling guard. But is he dangerous early? I mean, I believe it was even you that took because Malcolm Gordon's one of the chinniest people in the world. We were thinking even it's possible that he could KO him early on in the fight, just because of he's just going for it, balls to the wall round one. He's going to go there. He's going to throw big overhand, look for the submission. So I don't count Nate Maness to losing this fight out, but I do think the later this fight goes, Maness is the side. He's going to have a lot of advantages. I think he's going to make Jimmy Flick quit, and I think once Flick does quit, I think that's when Maness is going to be able to finish him however he wants.
He can't be this week's Miguel Baeza, because Miguel Baeza was minus 190, right? And I talked about why I thought Puna was probably the dog or pass side in that fight. I thought that the way to play Baeza was Baeza by sub. He went out there, he attempted a sub, ended up on his back, and that was the end of the fight.
And then he almost got subbed.
I thought he was concussed, bro. And you know what's so ironic, bro, is when you lose a bet and it looks so stupid, it sometimes puts you off from ever betting it again. And I bet against Dustin Stoltzfus, Punahele Soriano by submission. And then, I had the fight not to go the distance, right? So then it ends inside the distance, but Puna gets submitted. And I swear my mind was like blown. I was like, how is Dustin Stoltzfus submitting this guy? I was like, he should be out wrestling him. This is crazy. And so I just then assumed in my mind, I was like, okay, I was wrong. Puna just can't wrestle. He sucks, whatever. But then when I heard his interviews and when he came down to 170, I was like, you know what? At least give him that chance. I thought he was going to win by knockout. I unfortunately bet the knockout and the money line, but I mean, he did win by knockout like 65 times. So, it's just like the ref didn't want to stop it. He concussed him so bad in the first round with like that punch and kick to the head while he's like standing up and like lean forward. He's just like assaulting him with open right hands. And I'm like, they're not going to stop this with a guy who's had a history of like really bad concussive knockout losses. But in any case, they just let him get his ass whooped. The ref cashed the over and Puna by decision. I appreciated that. But listen, man, the way I see it is this. I think that Jimmy Flick should be an underdog, right? Like, who would disagree with that? But now we're just talking about assigning percentages, right? And where is this certain degree of confidence? Here's my questions from a narrative standpoint as well. You want to promote a guy like, Nate Maness, country tough. What do I always say? If you guys know, Kentucky tough, Nate Maness. Yeah, he is Kentucky tough. Where were they last week? They were in Kentucky. Why'd they leave his ass at home? I don't know. It's an interesting question, right? That's a big octagon where it's very hard to grapple somebody, okay? If I want to grapple you in the big octagon, I got to chase you around, got to grab a hold of you. I got to be like Puna. I got to hit you with a couple right hands, take you down along the fence. It's going to be a whole drawn-out process. If I want to grapple in the apex, it's going to be harder for you to avoid that. I'm going to be right up on you. We're going to be close to each other. It's a small cage, and it's not in Kentucky. So why did they not send Kentucky tough Nate Maness to go put on a show in front of his Kentucky fans? I thought that would have made a lot of sense. And instead they book him 1 week after to fight in the Apex Center against the Brick. I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel to me like if they wanted to do, right by our guy Nate Maness, they could have done more. They could have done a lot differently, and they didn't, right? So for me, it just seems like a fight where you're leaning into volatility. And Unders and Flick are the sides to me, but maybe I'm
Yeah.
going to look like an asshole. Listen, I don't take any pleasure in it, right? Like people are saying like Clint has this and what. Clint is a guy that I really like, right? He's a awesome friend of the show. He's a cool guy, but we all just got to approach the board how we see the board. If he sees the board with a lot of confidence on this side, that's the reason why the price is the way it is, right? They're going to book action on that side. But the way I play the game long term is I never or hardly ever do that, right? But also, I don't do that when it's not in their nature, when there's not a proven proof of concept. Tatsuro Taira is a favorite. There's a lot of proof of concept in that, right? Whether it wins or loses this weekend, you can point to the data set and say it won at this price and this price and this price. Nobody thought he should be favored against almost anybody, right? And it's not like Jimmy Flick's never won as an underdog. Basically, everybody thinks he should be an underdog every fight. He is an underdog in basically every fight, but he goes out there and he can win fights. He can be very dangerous, especially in that first round. So I think that it's not an easy proposition for me to go click, 85% on a guy who got submitted in the first round 2 fights ago. That's all I'm saying.
I think a lot of people will click that button, honestly, just because of like how like respectfully bad Flick is, right? Like, let's just be honest. Like, he's round 1 or bust.
Yeah, people are forgetting though. I always talk about Malcolm Gordon. If he had a chin, would be a fine fighter. He just doesn't have a good chin. So if you can out-grapple him, he's screwed. Because where's he supposed to go then? It's like, all right, you can out-grapple me, and if you touch me one time on the face, this all might be over anyway. So he was just stuck between a rock and a hard place in half of his UFC fights. But the guys that try and wrestle and grapple him proactively, they always struggle. But what was the difference? He still finished him, right? So he still finished him and got the win. And we've just seen that, again, Nate Maness, a guy I like and respect. I have nothing but positive things to say about Nate Maness. He's cashed me many tickets. Every time I bet him, he was a plus money underdog. That's just the way it is.
Because he's never been a favorite, right?
that's what I'm saying. So it just feels to me like whenever a public perception flips on its head, I'm always just not looking to jump on that side, typically speaking, because it's hard to find value when that happens, right? Somebody goes from being 20% 2 fights ago to being, 85+% this fight. It's like, wow, this other guy must be really useless, and maybe he is. But again, I just think that Jimmy Flick, you know what you're going to get. Submission attempts early, and then it probably goes sideways. So we've seen that submission attempts can finish the fight against him early. I would look towards the props, but I'm seeing love on sharp markets on Flick by decision too, which that one you'd have to convince me on. But
I was actually just gonna ask you, like, what do you think? Do you think Flick has any other path but a submission?
So here's the thing. We've seen that Umar Nurmagomedov, who is a great wrestler and grappler, right, and obviously much better than Jimmy Flick, he was able to go out there and ride the back ride, right? Just you see a long body from Nate Maness. That's a kind of body type that you could put a body triangle on and kind of just ride out rounds, ride out minutes. I don't know that Flick has the cardio to do it. We've seen in the past, he typically gasses out. But if he approaches it with an idea like, I'm going to go out there and body triangle this guy, and if I get the sub, great, and if I don't, I'm going to just hold on to it. That, for me, is his path to a decision. Otherwise, if he's striking with Nate Maness, I think he's going to get fucked up. Nate just hits too hard, and he's too tough and willing to get hit and lands with authority on the return. So that, for me, is the differentiator, right? If this fight ends by knockout, I do think we know who won it. But I think that if we're looking at the other paths to victory, it's a little bit more interesting and a little bit more competitive.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, like at the end of the day, I just think it's interesting that it's minus 800. The fight doesn't go the distance on a flyweight fight, right? When we're talking about stats, flyweight generally tends, obviously, in the modern era, guys are getting better. We see it like Taira, Van. These guys are have power now. It's a little bit different, but when we really talk about flyweight, you're not seeing that many finishes. I think it really has to just do with Flick's cardio, right? So that's where I'm at with that.
Absolutely. And the fact that Charles Johnson finished him, which is like an anomaly on his resume. But in any case, man, we got Garrett. Honestly, though, Charles Johnson's been coming closer to finishing a few different guys recently. I forget who the kid was that he had almost out of there in round 3. Or was it Maxim in round 3? I think it was Maxim that was exhausted in round 3 and getting his ass whipped. Yep. So in any case, man, we got Garrett Armfield taking on Brady Heistand. And I got to say, man, last time you tried to tell me Garrett Armfield's the side, bro. And I was like, I don't know, man. And then he went out there and whooped Brad Katona's ass. So I missed the Brad Katona fade. And then I tried to chase it with our guy, Jesse the Handlebar, and things didn't work out the way we hoped. How do you see this fight going down, my man? Clearly, you got a better read on Garrett Armfield than I do.
Yeah, and we're seeing him a lot more on social media as well, so that's interesting. He's obviously talked recently about interacting with the fans. I think the UFC likes that. I think they want guys who talk. They want guys who bring attention. So that's and like once I said again, I just had a feeling that it was an inkling too. There was nothing I knew that because he hadn't fought since he had went to the marathon MMA camp. But I just knew the IQ of Trey Ogden as a fighter starting that new camp and going from a bigger gym to a smaller gym where the focus is going to be more on him is going to help him. And the inkling wound up being correct. The other side of that was the Katona side, right? He's fighting with Carlos Vera close. The exact reason you made the read on Butler. The Ultimate Fighter fight. Every fight is super close. Same kind of read we had on Zahabi and Basharat. These guys are fighting 29-28. The fight's minus 350 to go the distance. Obviously, in this situation, it was similar. People were thinking Katona decision. It's all day, easy money. And that's all I was hearing all week. So I had to.
Or they were dropping money on Katona ITD, which that's the other thing. I'd much rather have the plus 500 Butler money line in a fight that goes the distance than have Katona ITD, which has never hit in 8 UFC fights. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. And
at plus 168 or whatever best available,
Yeah, and if you're going to finish anybody, it's going to be Jesse Butler. I can't believe he actually submitted Bryce Mitchell, bro. It's actually wild. But in that case, man, I like Garrett Armfield here, man. I think he's going to be able to avoid the wrestling of Heistand, who's a good wrestler. But the thing is, he just doesn't have anything to mix it up with. He doesn't have the hands to mix it up with. I don't think he has the best top control to mix it up with. I think Armfield's going to be able to avoid that. Ogden's a good wrestler in his own right, so I think that's a good sparring partner. You might even see him wrestling with Johns. I think they're working on that aspect of the game now with Trey Ogden, whereas before he was a little bit more jiu-jitsu-y based, I think. And that's something we saw in the improvements because nobody thought he was going to be able to stuff the takedowns of Katona, right? Because Katona's a great wrestler, but he was getting back to his feet and he was making the exchanges dirty and winning the boxing exchanges. The cardio was there too. That fight was a grueling pace. I don't think anybody thought he was going to be able to go that 15 minutes. I don't know, man. Both these guys have improved cardio since they went to the marathon MMA. We got to check that out, dog, because that's definitely something.
No, they're just doing more road work, dog.
Right.
They're just hitting the road more.
More road work.
Look at their sneakers, bro. You'll see there's a lot more wear on their sneakers.
Right, bro. But yeah, and now you're giving me a guy in Garrett Armfield who always is good in round. He fought close with Onama in round one, and he's always good in round one. I think he can. If you give him 3 rounds of that, is going to be a tough fighter to deal with. So I actually think this line's still got some value on the favorite. We're not always betting favorites, but sometimes you could leave money on the board if you don't, take these guys, whether it be for an absurd amount. Doesn't have to be, but if I think 1 unit on Armfield here at minus 165, minus 170, I think is plus EV because I just don't see the path for Heistand. What is he going to wrestle him for 15 minutes? Is he going to submit him? I don't really see those paths. So then what does it have to be? A knockout? Armfield's the better fighter. So I'm missing something here. Or I think, because in my opinion, I think Armfield's the clear side. Brady Heistand's a great fighter in and of his own right. I'm not going to knock on the guy, but he does slow down the later the fight goes. He fought close to Ricky Tercios, who we seen outed last week. It's a good matchup for him. And then let's take a look at some of his other fights as well. Heistand, that is. I just don't believe in his level of competition that much. And the fights that he does take the step up in, he's getting finished. I think Armfield's another step up with the recent version of him that we've seen. So I'm going to go Armfield here all day.
Yeah, I think this is also Armfield. Listen, I think that the path is the submission. You were asking, like, what is the path for Heistand? I think that we've just seen, like, number one, you could tire this guy out. So, like, the way to beat him is to make him really tired and then try and submit him, right? How often do you see somebody go for a sub early and, like, somebody's dry, whatever, but they know what to do? They're just fighting hands. They're doing everything right. And the person spends all this energy trying to submit him, and they keep defending. And then they're able to knock him out in rounds 2 or 3 or win the decision because the other guys spent too much energy, burnt themselves out. I think the good thing about Heistand is that he just keeps head down, keep going, keep trying to do it. He's pretty persistent with what he does. But he's also have a negative striking differential, arguably against a worse level of opposition overall. You're looking at him fight guys, and I do think that that win over the Bakary, it was almost just like the Bakary completely collapsed late. I don't think that was like a great look for Heistand, but it just shows that's what he's trying to do, right? And I can just tell you from my own personal experience, if I don't think I'm better than you, fine. Like, all right, like then let's figure out a different way to try and beat you because it's a competition. So I might not be better than everybody, but I can try and compete. I can try and make you tired. If we're both tired, maybe I'm better than you then. If we're both really uncomfortable, maybe I want it more than you do. That's what you have to try and push it to if you're not the better fighter. And so I think Heistand understands that about himself. Like, hey, I don't have as much experience as these guys. I'm not as clean. I'm going to have to go out there and make this dirty, try and take him down a bunch, try and make him tired, try and beat him up. And he did push the right way at the end of that fight. But when you just look at the talent level, I think Armfield is way more technical with his hands. I think he's faster. I think he's cleaner shots. Please go ahead. You got something?
Yeah, I gotta say before, I have not filmed this fight. This is something I'm gonna have to look more into because Armfield at a minus 170 price tag, I will just say it does kind of seem like a bait. Like it really does. And I am reading some of the comments. Armfield lock. Hold on, brother. Armfield lock, you cannot say that. Like, I cannot let that go because we, just like what you were saying, we have seen this guy make mistakes. We have seen this guy slow down. So am I taking too much stock in him myself, right? Am I taking too much stock in him in that Katona fight? Because he did have a really good performance last time out as an underdog. People got burned on him or they got paid.
So here's what we got to think about, right? I think number one, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was a pay-per-view, correct? In Canada?
UFC 297, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a pay-per-view in Canada, which means we're dealing with the big octagon. Okay. And that is a ideal situation if you're a striker, right? If you want to box, you want to move around. You don't want to be pressed to the fence every couple of seconds when the guy's pressuring forward on you. So I think that in the apex, that's something that we want to consider. Also, we go from being an underdog, public perception's flipped on its head, right? You said nobody wanted him last time. Now everybody thinks he's in a great position. Fundamentally, he might be, but you have to just question to yourself, am I being trapped by herd mentality? Hey, we were all over here. Now let's all be over here. I think about this fight and I say to myself, listen, Armfield, cleaner striker, better technician. I think he's a smarter operator at this point in his career, like you mentioned, trying to improve his standing on social media, trying to get people to pay a little bit more attention to him. Had a great win last time out, didn't get as much credit for it, right? Who gets back in there first? Brad Katona. It's like, golly, how am I supposed to, push my own career forward? I can't even get booked in these fights in enough time. But I think that what we're seeing is Armfield maturing a little bit, right? He's lost to Onama a handful of times. That's a brutal matchup, right? A guy who's way bigger than him, a guy who's strong, physical, really can put a squeeze on you, has a good submission game, even though he's not super technical. You guys will understand. You go with a very good athlete, they start locking you up in holds. It doesn't matter if they, studied, the principles of war or whatever. They're just going to squeeze the shit out of you, and that's going to be the end of it. So I think that Armfield probably has more paths to victory here. But here's the fundamentals again that make me just hesitate a slight bit as a favorite. Doesn't attempt takedowns really, right? So let's say he got buzzed on the feet in this fight for whatever reason. It's a cage fight, two guys swinging at each other. He gets buzzed. Is he going to shoot takedowns? Like, he's probably just going to have to cover up, fire back with shots on the feet. It's just something where I like to know a guy has a bailout strategy. Hey, things just went sideways for a second. I'm going to push you against the fence. I'm going to hold on to you. I'm going to take you down. He has no takedown so far in his UFC footage. So that's something I'm keeping in the back of my mind. Like, maybe he can do that. Maybe he can implement that, but maybe that's not in his arsenal, right? That's something I'm thinking about. And Brady Heistand, we know, is going to try and mix in the takedowns. He's going to try and wrestle. He's going to try and grapple. He's got a 60-some-odd% takedown defense on paper. So, again, Katona fight, he showed, I'll work back up to my feet. I'm not going to settle on bottom. But he did tire out over the course of doing that. So could he catch him late in bad positions? I think that's a possibility. I think that's the way you'd have to approach this if you're Heistand's camp and corner. But for me, man, I'm just leaning towards Armfield, probably a decision, maybe a knockout here, because you do see a negative striking differential for Heistand if he's not getting the takedowns. I think he's going to be, kind of getting lit up on the feet, kind of being exposed because his striking is just rudimentary, right? He's very good at mixing up his game and trying to get on top of people. He throws the high kick a little bit. He tries to mix up his offense, but he just doesn't look like a very fluid striker. And I think that Armfield, his background is in boxing purely, right? He's like, I think he used to train at the Olympic Training Center for boxing. The guy knows how to throw hands, and that's what he's going to try and do all night. So I think he's going to connect a big uppercut and maybe even put him away.
Yeah, he got that knockout on that dude. He knocked
Kazama.
out That's Japanese Connor, right? I said Fugitt.
No.
Two different people.
Fugitt knocked out Japanese Connor, who's Yusaka Kinoshita. The other guy is like Toshi Kazama, I believe is his name, and he has good jiu-jitsu, but he's a little bit susceptible to the strikes, let's say.
Yeah,
right?
and they already know these guys now. The Japanese market, they've been watching these guys. They know them, and who's the main event? Who's the cream at the? You got 2 Asian guys in this one, Van as well, another one. So that could be.
There's a ton of Asian talent on the card. If you noticed throughout, from Japan to China,
right? Jeka.
And I forget where Van represents. Is it Myanmar? I believe it's
Burmese. I think it is something like that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Word up.
It's something like it's very exotic. Like it's like he's the only fighter that's whatever it is. I can't remember. I think it's like Burmese. Yeah. I want to say, but I don't want to misspeak.
No worries, my man.
Yeah.
Well, we'll leave it to the comment section.
Yeah, man.
Burma and Myanmar. There you go.
Myanmar, right. Yep, thank you, brother.
Shout out to SD Crusader. You're the man for that.
The last thing I wanted to mention is just off of it. Heistand, I think, is a more physical opponent than a guy like Katona. So I think that could, tire out Armfield as well. If he's forced to, if Heistand's putting his weight on him, a guy like Katona, I think, is a little bit smaller than Heistand, a little less physical, whereas Heistand could be putting the weight on him. Armfield might tire out quicker, right, if he's carrying the weight of Heistand, especially early on in the fight. So, yeah, I would like to see Heistand, if I'm on his side, get the grappling going early, and that's something I might look for in a live bet, especially to see how the cardio of Armfield holds up. Because if he can't get Heistand off of him, it's going to be a tough fight for him. But if he's able to keep away from him and get it to boxing range, he should have a massive advantage. So I'll have to definitely look into this one, man.
Yeah, I agree. Tape will be king on a lot of fights this week because it's a really tricky card, right? A bunch of closely lined matchups throughout, and then the ones that are widely lined, they're not typical favorites. They're not guys that you see as massive chalk in most of their fights. So it is something that's curious to see. And with that being said, let's pull up the Tapology, move on to the next fight here. I somehow closed out Tapology as we were going, but we've got next up, guys, a fight that's going down in the women's flyweight division. Carli Judice stepping in for her second fight, I believe. Gabriella Fernandes, this will be her third walk to the octagon, if my memory serves. She lost against Jasmine Jasudavicius and Teresa Bleda, both via decision since she debuted in the promotion. And this is an interesting one because obviously Gabriella Fernandes, a more proven ground game, right? Carli Judice, basically a stand-up fighter from the looks of things, right? When you look at her approach, she likes to go out there and box. She throws some kicks as well. But we're just looking at a record where, she hasn't fought many girls, right? So you don't know what to make of her record. She hasn't fought very many quality girls. The Ernesta Carrasqueta fight, I believe she was actually favored to win that one and lost split decision, extremely competitive. Both girls landed a ton of volume on the feet in that fight. And that does make you think like, man, this girl could go out there and win fights in the women's division. There's not that many knockouts. So, she's going to have opportunities to just win a lot of decisions if she can get it there. Also, she's got some wins by knockout. On the Gabriella Fernandes side, you would think she's going to have the more sophisticated ground game, 3 wins by submission, including her most recent win as a professional coming via way of submission. However, you look at the losses, basically all the UFC quality girls she's fought throughout her career, Maria Silva, Jasmine Jasudavicius, Teresa Bleda, she lost all those fights. She didn't look great for large portions of some of those fights. She's not very active at times in her fights, a little bit complacent at times. So now you have to think, might be fighting for her job in her career coming off 2 straight losses, probably a 4-fight deal. Maybe they extend her one more out, but you just have to think, she's got a chip on her shoulder to come in here. But Carli Judice, she has the same thing, right? Lost a close split decision. And you can just see that for a girl that's quite green, she's effective. She lands offense. She's, pretty confident in her ability to go out there and throw. So I don't think either one of these women is very high level. I think that Gabriella Fernandes has fought the better competition for sure. But at a plus money indication, I think it's a dogger pass spot. I haven't seen enough from Fernandes to believe in her yet. She might have the ground game upside here, but we saw that with Rayan dos Santos last week. She didn't pursue hardly a takedown. You don't often see in WMMA people take the path of least resistance. They often don't fight to a great game plan. And so we haven't seen that from her in her past fights. let's see if she can make the adjustments here. She's got a third opportunity. But for me, Carli Judice, I put a list together on, a few nights ago. I think it was Sunday night for Patreon. And most of these fights, guys, I had no opinion pre-tape. But I just said Carli Judice, ends KO here. I think both these women are going to swing. And I just think Carli Judice has a chance to win this fight via knockout, throws a lot of volume. And I think Fernandes has kind of been let off the hook a little bit by her opponents fatiguing in her fights. Teresa Bleda, known gasser, fatigued in round 3 there, was definitely getting beat up a little bit. I saw people posting that footage. That is a great point to bring up because Gabriella Fernandes can crack. She can throw hard shots, but I think she does it one at a time. I think she's going to do it bit by bit, and I think she's going to be getting outlanded, on the raw numbers here by a pretty large number. So it's a weird fight, but give me Carli Judice via KO or decision on instincts. How about you, brother?
Yeah, we're seeing eye to eye on this one, man, because I love what the UFC did here because we got a girl in Gabriella Fernandes who has been exposed in the grappling at some points, right? Bleda is a massive girl for that weight class, and Jazz the Vicious, we know now, is a great wrestler, great fighter in her own right, has proven it in the UFC so far. So we're going to give her the respect of losing to those two opponents, but she's been taken down. Now you got Judice, who is relatively inexperienced, but is a stand-up fighter in her own right. So you don't want to give her if you give her a wrestler right away, that's a tough test. They do that in the UFC sometimes. I think they actually are giving Judice a winnable matchup here. Say, and Fernandes at the same time, right? Say, go out there, Fernandes, right? You lost 2 times grappling, but if you lose this one, you're done. So go out there. We're going to give you an opponent who's not going to try to take you down. Go ahead and see if you can win it. Now, this girl, she lost her Contender Series fight. She's obviously a striker. I'm going to bring her in here and put her up against another striker. And I love the matchmaking. And I think it's going to be a banger because Fernandes throws with vitriol. And I don't think Fernandes has the worst takedown defense, actually. She does get put on her back. It's just when she gets put on her back, she doesn't get back up. She has no path to get back to her feet. So that's going to be a big problem if she does win this fight in the future. How do you match her? Because she can't win a wrestling, and it kind of could create for some boring fights, right? Yeah, she does crack, but if she can't defend the wrestling, what is it anyway? And now Judice, right? You know what you're going to get with her. And I actually know it's limited film. From what I remember in my head, I actually don't think her takedown defense is the worst. We don't really know much about it, and Fernandes isn't really out there shooting offensive takedowns. So for me here, Judice, crisp boxing. They call her crispy for a reason. I like her head movement. I like the way she gets just out of range of the punches, and she's always there to return to counter. So I think ends by KO is a great look here. I believe it's going to be favored probably to end. Not favored, but it's going to be close to end inside the distance compared to some other women's fights because it's for a good reason. Both these girls are going to be standing. I don't see any grappling here. Maybe a flash submission. We've seen submissions pre-UFC from Fernandes. She got that, I believe it was a guillotine choke victory, the fight right before she came into the UFC. So she is live for submission, but I don't think Judice is going to initiate it. And I think Judice is going to be able to defend the takedowns. So I think it's just going to turn into a stand-up match. Will one of the girls try to implement it? Maybe, Liam. Maybe. I think it would be somewhat smart to at least try for either girl since we've seen weaknesses in both their games there. Especially for the Fernandes side, try to take Judice down, at least see what it is. But I think she's going to run into Judice, probably get stuffed, and then it's going to be back at feet. I think Judice will be able to stuff her, get back to feet, and then at a plus 180 price tag, WMMA. I'm not sure if I'm going to bet it. She is inexperienced, but I think that that inexperience, the unknowns on her, from what I see, she's a talented fighter. You might be getting some value because of that. So we'll have to see. It is the truth. She doesn't have the experience, but everybody has to start somewhere, especially in WMMA. And that's it. She made it to the UFC. She's here. Let's see what she could do. Not sure if I'm going to be betting this one, my man, but we're seeing eye to eye. And I think violence could be the answer here.
Yeah, I got a couple things to put out there as we end this. Number one, this line is kind of dropping off a cliff, right? She was like -2XX. It's come down pretty substantially on the Fernandes side. I think that makes sense. I think it was too wide before. And, I think if you can catch a number before it falls, maybe that makes some sense. But, it's going to start to contract here, it looks like. Also, want to shout out our guy. No, I feel you, dude. I feel the same way, but
I don't want to rush in.
Exactly. You want to make sure that it's the right play. When I'm looking at this, Rich put out his mush of the week, and I think that has a lot to do with this. I actually saw some people cashing out of plays and things like that. He's very good at what he does, right? So when he makes somebody the mush of the week, it is a scary feeling, and he's not always right. Nobody is. Nobody's perfect, but he's right at a very high clip on those predictions. I think last week the mush of the week was Jerry Cannonier. So right, wrong, or indifferent, right, fair, foul, or however you felt about that main event, he's on the right side of it once again. And at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? So I think that this is a spot where it's a money line dog or pass situation, and certainly some respected money coming in on the Judice side that I know of personally. So best of luck, no matter how you target it, but great fight on paper, fun one. And we can move along to the next one, my brother. So next up, back to Tapology. I keep getting so fired up with what we're doing over here that I lose my Tapology. I lose my Tapology link every 30 seconds here. But man, we got my guy back in the building, Jeka Saragih. And Jeka last time out, this is another example, bro. Last time plus 350. He's like a huge underdog to Lucas Alexander. And I said, who is Lucas Alexander? What exactly is he going to do to Jeka Saragih? Is he going to knock him out? He's going to decision with guys, he's landing, the right shots over 15 minutes, but he didn't strike me as a very dangerous guy. And Jeka can just hit somebody one time and they're sleeping, right? Snoring. And then that's what I like about him, right? He could just change the complexion of a fight. He's got real knockout power. Road to UFC, you see it. Sometimes these guys just hit different. Bang, people just go to sleep. It's crazy. So I think that Jeka hits very hard. He's known for his striking, his stand-up ability, but he also got in work with Paddy Pimblett and those guys. He went out to train with J-Flow Judo. He kind of mixed up his training a little bit. I think his management was a big part of that. Like, hey, dude, you got to grapple. You got to wrestle. We got to get you in there with better guys. And so you saw Lucas Alexander starting to think like, hey, let me wrestle this guy. Let me grapple him. He gets up. There's an exchange. Turn around. Bang. The fight's over. That's what he can do. He's a very dangerous guy. He can close the show in a second. So I understand why he's favored against Westin Wilson. I mean, Westin Wilson can be knocked out. He can be submitted in meme-like fashion. He can make bad decisions. But he's been basically booked to fail in all of his fights so far. And I think they're doing the exact same thing here, right? So make no mistake. I think the UFC wants Jeka to go out there and splatter this guy. But you just have to think about Joe Anderson Brito, John Silva. These are both well-rounded guys from Brazil that can go out there and knock you out. But you have to assume they have more experience on the ground because they come from a place where everybody trains on the ground, where it's not uncommon for everybody to have a gi and train frequently, right? So the quality of average guys that they train with in their gym is higher than what Jeka was training with not that long ago in his career. So you just have to think to yourself, Westin Wilson, what is his path to victory? Long arms, long limbs. I don't think he's going to win this fight by knockout personally. I think Jeka is a better striker than he is. And I also think he's tougher. I think he could take a better shot. But I think that the way that he wins this fight is by trying to mix in the wrestling and the grappling, taking this guy down, using his length, his long limbs, and his ability to go for submissions to try and get Jeka. I think that's the way you beat Jeka. And I think that we could see that, right? Like, I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. I do think Westin Wilson's a tough guy. I think he wants to go out there and win. I just don't think he's well equipped, right? There's some people that are blessed with certain skills, abilities, and attributes that he does not have, like the ability to take a great shot or the ability to, manhandle your opponents. Like, he's just not as physical as some of his opponents. He gets manhandled a little bit. He gets hurt with big shots to the feet, but it's like, he's a long guy. He's an awkward guy. He's got more professional experience and at a higher level. So I don't feel comfortable laying these prices on Jeka. I would rather have like a violence price and just hope that this guy gets flattened again like he normally does. But it's like, for me, you just have to be a little bit weary when you're getting guys that don't have, a super clear offensive grappling path. I like to play into the upside of that. So if you get 20-1 on Jeka by sub or something, it's like, hey, how wrong could you be? Maybe he submits him. Weston's been submitted a million times before. But you just have to think, logically speaking, the path for Jeka here is probably to come out here and knock this guy's head off, which he can do. But that's being priced like an 85% outcome. And it's just like, that's a tough sell, in mixed martial arts, where we see how often somebody has all this power and whatever, and they get taken down 3 times, and then they don't have the power no more. They're kind of tired, and they're just like, whatever. It sucks to be out here. That kind of can happen to people. So I believe that Jeka is a talented guy, but I don't believe he's shown us enough to be minus 450 and whatever in UFC fights. So I think he's going to splatter this guy. I'm not thrilled or excited by the prospect of going to play Westin Wilson, but if I just have to, give away a little game, I would be looking more towards the prop side of things. Like, hey, how could he actually realistically win this? Is there a good enough number to get involved? That's the way I would look into this one. But good fight on paper, for both guys, right? A winnable fight, I feel, for both guys, but I think they're trying to do Jeka a favor and get him another highlight reel win. My man, how do you feel about this one?
I have a tough time because we've even seen Westin Wilson lose by decision, albeit pre-UFC. He's lost every single kind of way you could lose because once this guy gets in a round 2, he tires out. Now, will Jeka have the ability to make him quit? Possibly, but I could even see a situation where he hurts him. Westin Wilson goes to his back. Does Jeka follow him? Does he, could Westin Wilson actually survive here? So I love the violence idea. I tend to do agree this fight, but this guy took Pow Man to a distance. I believe that fight went to the distance on Road to UFC. If not, it was a late finish versus Pow Man. Who was Pow Man? He was doing the exact same thing. He was pulling guard. He was sitting on his butt. He wasn't urgent to get to his feet. And the thing about Westin Wilson, he said it before, he's comfortable on his back. When a guy says that, yeah, sure, he's live for a submission. And we talked about it with Flick before, but I'm not comfortable with it, right? It's not a good MMA strategy, but it is dangerous. He had, knee bar attempts on this guy, Joe Anderson Brito, I believe it was, before he grabbed the fence. Apparently, that's Westin Wilson's thing. If you listen to the interviews, he grabbed the fence, ground and pound. Hey, I'm not arguing with you, but
he probably did, bro.
He probably did, but that might not be the reason why you lost. Training at, he's going to places like New Wave Grappling, trying to get the grappling, but he's very jiu-jitsu oriented. I think, Jeka could just stay safe on top, pass his guard, stay in positions. He's going, he did take down Pow Man a couple times. I think he does want to avoid the jiu-jitsu here, land the power shots, but if Westin Wilson doesn't give him a choice, I'm just sketchy about really betting methods on this one. Yeah, I think he could submit him. Like you said, we seen Wilson submitted by Gogo Plata in 2019. Little thumbs up just came up. I don't know if y'all could see that, but Jeka, I know he's not the best, but he does have rear naked choke attempts. And yeah, what we saw versus Jubilee wasn't great, but that was on bottom. Jubilee was bringing more of a wrestling game. Do we know Westin Wilson really has the wrestling to take Jeka down? He's super long and dangly. He's more of a jiu-jitsu guy. He's going to be able to consistently take Jeka down. I tend to lean towards no, Liam. So I'm going to say Jeka wins this fight, just regardless of lines. And that's what I think. Wilson's path for me is the round 1 sub. And I think after that, honestly, it's Busto Augusto. I think this guy is legitimately in the UFC because they like Wonder Boy. And they were like, dog, yeah, get your boy in here for a little bit. He can have some fun. But I think I think Saturday's the end of the Westin Wilson experience. It's going to be the last chance you guys get to fade him or bet him. So make sure you take advantage of it or don't. I don't care, man. This fight's crazy, bro.
Yeah, the last thing I'll leave you guys with is just he is going to be the much bigger guy, right? 6'1" compared to 5'8", 73-inch reach compared to a 69-inch reach. So if you guys like betting on the bigger guy at big plus money, you have that opportunity with Westin Wilson, but he's got a lot of flaws as well. So interesting fight. Next up, my man, I'll just be very frank and level with you guys. I don't remember Julia Pilastri's fights. I know that she's fought before. I even think I've written up stuff about her fights before because she was on Contender Series. I don't remember it. Not a very memorable fighter in my recollection, but that doesn't mean she can't win on Saturday night, right? She's got more professional experience here as the younger fighter, something that I look for long-term. She's going to have a reach advantage as well. But on the other side, Josephine Knudsen, very respected, very boring, I would argue, just not the kind of style of fighting I like to watch. But she did land a lot on Isis Verbeek. She did take her down, dominate that fight. Same thing with Marnik Man, not a very competitive fight throughout. So I feel like we definitely have seen Knudsen look good. She trains at All-Star Sweden, I believe. Trained with Khamzat Chimaev, looked very talented as like a prospect. But again, just a little bit of a boring style, a lot of control style grappling. And I think that that's probably what we're going to see here. But I don't know, man, because Pilastri, young Brazilian girl, you think that she's got a pretty solid jiu-jitsu pedigree with 3 wins by submission. So I got to watch the tape on this one, but it just doesn't feel like a fight where I want to get my money involved. I feel like it's probably going to be 15 minutes of Knudsen winning a decision. How about you, brother?
Yeah, she gave Jasmine some trouble in round 3. Later, the fight went. The thing is like pre-UFC, the reason I bet Jasmine there and why I took her was because of the takedown defense. So that's probably why this is lined the way it's lined. She's been taken down a lot before. That's the path to victory when you're facing her. Obviously, Knudsen could get you on the ground. So I think from a cut and dry standpoint, that's probably why, like I said, Knudsen is the favorite. Training with Khamzat Chimaev. We know Khamzat Chimaev will be competing next week as well. Interesting they didn't have them line up on the same card, but it could be just like one of those things where she gets the win, promote the next card on Khamzat Chimaev. But I got to look more into this one, bro. I haven't seen anything of Pilastri. I vaguely remember her last contender series fight, but I don't think that girl was that good. I think Knutsen's way higher levels. So I don't know, man. I need to look more into this one, but I know Pilastri had pre-UFC and in the contender series fight was kind of just falling over and playing off her back the whole time, not really looking to get back to her feet. So,
Yeesh. I will just say Jasmine is huge, right? Like that's the one difference, Knutsen is like not. So that I think is where it could get interesting, right? If one woman's more physical, I don't say this about every fight. I said this about the Johnson fight, but this is another one. I'd like to see how these two women face off. I'd like to see what their size looks like. I think in women's MMA, oftentimes that plays a huge role, a huge factor. And, I'll compare the cardiovascular capabilities as well. But I think Knutsen just looks like she's, pretty sound fighter.
I will say Pilastri's definitely got good cardio. She was putting it on Jasmine. From what I remember, she was putting on Jasmine round 3. And we've seen Jasmine slow down a little bit, especially the pace she was trying to put on the wrestling. But, when you just don't show an urgency to get back up to your feet, that is a red flag to me because you're losing minutes as the time goes on. Obviously, the judges haven't been judging it as highly, but it's still time getting off the clock. And if you don't do nothing in the round, Knutsen puts you down, that's going to be a problem. But I think that's a great point because physicality always going to be a little bit more of a factor in women's MMA, I believe. And I think the style of wrestling that Knutsen presents is a little bit different than Jasmine as well. So great points, man. Great points.
Appreciate that, buddy. And the other thing I'll just leave you with on this fight, guys, is if you look at Pilastri, 6.19 significant strikes landed per minute. I mean, again, not against very high level opposition, but she's throwing a lot of shots, right? That's one way you win fights in WMMA. Additionally, she's going out there and her striking accuracy, same as her opponent. Her striking defense, relatively the same as her opponent. Difference is the amount of strikes they face, right? She faced way more strikes, so she was getting hit a lot more. Jasmine Jasudavicius is a proven UFC girl, right? She's gone out there and won fights, ranked fights in the division. So very quality. And then the other thing to note is Knutsen has not attempted a submission so far in the UFC. She's dominated fights from on top, but she's been very conservative with her offense. I do think the woman who's more likely to attempt to finish this fight is probably Pilastri. So whether or not she's successful, I just think she's going to give you some opportunities on the feet and on the ground. So it's an interesting one. This is one I'm definitely going to take. And last but not least, my brother, speaking of Asian talent, Shayilan Nurdenbeki, 50 professional fights under his belt. What an absolute stud at 30 years of age. I mean, this guy just doesn't stop. And then on the other side, Mel Costa, a solid fighter, 27 years of age, hasn't had 50 pro fights, but he's had plenty of pro fights, right? Neither one of these guys lacking for experience. But both of these guys have been knocked out brutally recently inside the octagon. So something to just be a little weary of coming into this matchup. How do you feel about this one, my brother? We'll have you lead us off.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting matchup because I think Nurdenbek is a good wrestler. But then once he's not able to get it to the ground. The thing is, the problem with him is his top control. When you're coming into the UFC and you're facing a guy like Thiago Moises, we saw Moises. He wasn't able to get Ludovic Klein down. He could struggle sometimes in the wrestling to get the fight to the ground. But once he gets it to the ground, he's one of the highest level fighters in the UFC that you could face. So to come in on a debut against that guy, it's a tough task. Whereas on the other end, you could say the same thing for Nurdenbek. He came in versus Josh Kulabau, a good fighter, but Kulabau pretty much outclassed him there. Whereas Costa, he fought okay with Thiago Moises, was able to get back up to the feet at some points even. Whereas Nurdenbek, to me, isn't as good of a control grappler as Moises by far. He's falling off position versus guys like TJ Brown, falling off position against guys like Sean Soriano, who say what you want about both of them, but I don't think either of them are in the UFC anymore. Derek Minner is not in the UFC anymore. So there's that. Now you got on the other side, he fought Austin Lingo, where he looked, the best in that fight. He was able to pick Lingo apart. He mixed all three levels up. He was going to the body there. He loves that southpaw body kick. And I think, takedowns will come early. Southpaw is good for him because he's going to have that liver kick. He's going to be able to come to the left side. But also he's going to be front with the right leg. So Shaolin Nurdenbek, if he wants to shoot, the leg's right there, right? It's going to be easier to grab than an orthodox opponent. So that's something to keep in mind. I do think at some point Shaolin will probably take him down because he is the better wrestler. But I think Costa will use his butterflies, use the underhooks to get back up to the feet. And when he's on the feet, I think he's going to have a big advantage here because Shaolin, if he's not able to get the wrestling off, he's very spastic. He'll throw spinning strikes. He's very far at kicking range, where I think Costa is best. He was picking apart Lingo with those body kicks. I've seen on his record, he's been finished pre-UFC. Nerdenbeck was finished pre-UFC by body kicks. Even in the last fight, I thought it was a body shot by Garcia, but he also hit him. If you watch the knockout, it was a kick to the liver. The toes go into the liver. And I think the combination of those toes to the liver and then the body shot put Nerdenbecky down. So we've seen this guy finished a few times with body work. And I will say I like the body work that I'm seeing in Costa. I know that's a little bit kind of dry, but it's something I did see in the film. So give me Costa, use his hooks, underhook to get back to the feet, fight up the right way. I don't think Nerdenbecky's some back take artist like Thiago Moises. So I don't think he's going to get outclassed like that. And then once it's on the feet, I think Costa's the better striker. He was sitting at like minus 170. And then from what I saw last, he's been bet down to minus 200 now. So some possible sharp action coming in on money. Whatever it is, the books are adjusting the line. So last thing I will say, Narrative Nation, bro. 2 or 3 days ago, North Carolina announces National Vitiligo Month, the month of June. What are the chances the one guy with vitiligo in the UFC is now fighting now during Vitiligo Month in June? Make it make sense, brother. I got to say, call me. Where's the tinfoil hat? I got to go with my man Clint on this one. He bought out the tinfoil hat. That's me on this one, bro. I think Mel Costa's the side anyway. Obviously, that's just extra nonsense that we do. But I like Mel Costa here, my man. And I think actually it's a market. I know it's a super small, what's the word you use? Esoteric? I guess maybe that's a word.
Niche market, I think is what you're looking for. Yeah.
Niche market. But, the vitiligo guys, they support their own, bro. So they're coming in for Mel Costa this week. And I'm going to be going with him, bro. All jokes here at the end. But in all reality, I really do like Costa here, man. I think he's going to get it done.
Fair play, man. I love a good narrative take. I just wanted to address, because I put this up on the screen before. He actually has taken off a pretty substantial amount of time, my brother. He's been out for, well over 12 months. His last fight was in April of 2023. We're now in June of 2024, right? So about 14 months he's taken out of the cage, which I think is requisite to, recover from a big knockout like that. He's got 50 professional fights. It's not like he needs to jump back in there, get more experience, right? I think he just needed to stay in the training room, get a little bit better with his skills. So at 30 years of age, it's kind of like time to get going, right? Like if he's going to make something of himself. And losses to Steve Garcia and Josh Culibao, they're not terrible, right? The thing is, his wins just don't age great, right? The Derek Minner fixed fight, we all know what happened there. It's just not a competitive enterprise, right? Then you look at, shout out to James Krause, the realtor, great comment from Dick's Insider. TJ Brown, right? Not a great UFC fighter, very average guy. A guy that can mix up 15 minutes of positions, but makes bad decisions, can just make fights harder than they have to be for himself. Sean Soriano, a guy can't buy a win in the UFC with all love and respect. Like it's just been a tough road to hoe. The grappling, it's just been a big problem for him. So on this side of things, you see, Shah Yalan. Oh, Bo is making a good point. You're talking about Costa. Fair play, my man, because they're both coming off the Garcia loss. That's a great point. And I do think that Costa's was worse even. Like it was a head strike. It was a series of head strikes. And then he's wrestling the referee, pretty substantially.
Dude, he hit the switch on him. What's the referee's name?
Oh, Tyone, was it?
Yeah, Tyone hit the switch on him, bro. He hit it on him, dog.
Oh, brutal. He's like, there was like another dude like leaned over, like explaining in his ear, and then he just like stops and looks up. He's like, what? He was so confused. It's hard to watch. It's a really bad knockout. And he is coming back quickly off that. For me, the problem is I feel the same way about both guys, except that one guy has way more experience, right? Which is that if you look, Josh Culibao, Steve Garcia, those are fine fighters. They're like fringe, like top 25-ish guys, right? They can beat a lot of guys, they can lose to guys, but they're just dangerous, right? They can hang around, they can make fights competitive. Melsik Bagdasaryan was beating on Josh Culibao, then he takes his back, he finishes him. He's just like a guy that can make a fight happen. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, Mel Costa, he goes out there against Steve Garcia, he loses that fight. We'll throw that out, right? Both these guys lost to the same guy. Let's consider that the same. But then it's like, okay, then let's look at what else has happened. You had Shayilan win a bunch of these fights. He lost to Cuamba, competitive decision. Cuamba's a pretty tough guy to put away. Then you look at, on the other side, Thiago Moises. He's a guy that is very hit and miss in his results in the UFC. You never have a good beat on the guy, but he could definitely be overwhelmed early. He normally doesn't like big guys. I was a little bit worried for him against Mel Costa. I was like, man, this guy's supposed to know jiu-jitsu. He's a big guy. He could come in and pressure and overwhelm him. It just wasn't really the case, right? Thiago Moises was able to land some decent shots himself. He was able to get to his wrestling positions, get to the takedowns. He's a better quality grappler than Shayilan Nuerdanbeki, but he also might, have a little bit less of a persistence, right? Like sometimes Thiago Moises just realizes like, this one's not for me. It's not going to be my night. And he kind of just checks out on the fight a little bit mentally, and then has to like will himself back into it. The corner has to yell at him. Like all these different things have to go right for him. Where Thiago Moises against Johnson, he gets 10-8'd in round 1, and his corner has to like shake him and be like, bro, jiu-jitsu and he doesn't. Please, for the love of all things holy, go submit him. Like he's just one of these guys. And I think that Mel Costa, he felt comfortable in that fight. Thiago Moises. So he was able to get off on him. He was able to win. He was able to get to his positions. Austin Lingo, man, he's a guy that, I just don't see it from an athletic standpoint. He's kind of got that little belly fat coming into his fights. He's a very average guy. Luis Saldana, not a guy who's had a great career. Jacob Kilburn, guy who really got washed out of the UFC, with all due respect, and mostly got exposed. Yusuf Salal, pretty sound decision for Yusuf there. Nate Landwehr submits him easily. Mel Costa goes out there and put a whooping on him. So a bunch of guys have kind of found the way to crack the Austin Lingo code, so to speak, and he hasn't put a good win together so far in the octagon, with all love and respect. Even the fights he won, like Saldana, he was getting hurt in those fights. So I just think this fight is a lot more honest than the odds. I see both guys as pretty average. I like your narrative, though. So if I had to tip the scales, maybe I'd make it -125, +100, something like that. The things that spook me, though, is that when I'm looking at it, number one, the topology side, everybody likes Nuerdanbeki, line's not reacting accordingly. And then additionally, he's the older fighter. So he does have more experience. That's something I like to look for, but he's the older fighter with more experience. And, I'm just not sure that he's got the depth of skills that Mel Costa has. So it's an interesting fight, but I kind of just feel like on hardware, I like the hardware on Nuerdanbeki a little bit more. And I think that he might be able to finish this fight. So my brother, any closing thoughts that you have here?
Yeah, I'm glad we had at least a little disagreement at the end. And, I was going to say it too. Like when we're talking about the wins in Nuerdanbeki, we got to talk about the one win of Mel Costa in the UFC, which is Austin Lingo, who I think, like you said, you made some great points there. I got nothing else to say, my man. I think we did a great job breaking down this card. And I appreciate you having me on, my man. I hope we make some cash this week. There's still a lot to look into, but it's going to be looked into. You already know that. And much love, my man.
Hell yeah, brother. I know you got other places to be, so if you got a jet, I appreciate the time. I appreciate
you. No rush,
you,
bro. No rush. Thank you for having me.
Man, absolutely. The pleasure's all mine. And guys, thank you all for being here. We've had a great show. I'm excited about the card. It's not the best card they've ever put together on paper, but we've got betting opportunities. We got live underdogs as far as I see it, and we got a whole nother set of opportunities in terms of our next breakdown, bets and banter, where we come back a little bit more educated on these fights, a little bit more tape study done, a little bit more dialed in. And plus, we'll have access to the props. We'll have access to more widely available numbers. That's where we're going to lean towards our conversation. So guys, make sure if you're not already, get subscribed to the channel so you are there to tune in when we go live. If you want to make sure you never miss when we get started live, hit that bell for notifications. They'll let you know, hey, we're about to go live. Sometimes we mix up the time here. And then last but not least, guys, drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed this content. I'm going to put this out on podcast. I've been spotty about it the last little while, but that's the goal for today. Timestamps, put it out on podcast. So appreciate the support. God bless you all. Make sure you come back next time. We'll have all the same fun again. Last but not least, thank you to John Kelly and Fight Numbers. If you guys are looking to invest in your information, have access to the best props, odds live when you're talking about getting the best of the number, there's no better way to beat this MMA game than to play the books off each other. Don't always try and be Nostradamus. You want to have an opinion? Great. Have an opinion and then take it to the best available price. because if you're not getting the best price, it's going to be hard to win long term. So for me, that's the biggest asset of the service, getting access to real-time odds, whether the fight is going on live or it's pre-fight, you're getting the best of the number. That's how you're going to win long term. So if you want to check it out, go ahead. They've got plenty of free stuff on the site, fightnumbers.com. Also, if you want to check out the premium service, use my promo code Liam, and they will hook you up for 30%. Guys, thank you all so much. God bless you all. Come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. Thanks, everybody.